OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
All right. Tuesday morning of Grand Slam weekend of St. Patrick's Week. It's a short week this week for a lot of people. Not us. We will have lots of programming coming your way on Friday. I did the looking to the side thing there because it kind of is for me. There's a lot of body language going on, analysis in American football at the moment where general managers are being asked about their best players and they're like touching their head and like, oh, we really love this guy, he's amazing, and apparently that's a bad sign.
The winner really scratched the beard.
It's like, I'm a guilty man.
Yeah. They said that about Alex Ferguson in his press conferences on a Friday briefing, that he would put his hands behind his head like this and lean back, which apparently is a sign of unconscious superiority.
I'd say in his case it wasn't so unconscious.
Oh, very conscious that.
What are you talking about?
You can actually look back. There's loads of shots of him in different body language, but essentially this kind of thing going on here.
I was reading somewhere recently last week where you should move slower, move your body in slower movements, and you look like a more confident human being generally. Do you know, if you're real skittish and like whatever, you actually look like you're not in control of yourself. But if you actually just consciously move yourself, and just carry yourself a little bit more effortlessly and slower, I don't know, it adds to people's opinions of you. There you go.
Portrays a sense of calm and assuredness.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Jojo's nodding away here. He knows. Sound engineer Jojo.
Yeah.
We bounce everything off Jojo if he says yes or no to it. But yeah, I'd be big into the old body language studies. You know, I'd find them interesting. I'm not sure if I agree with them all now. You know, but I'd find the findings somewhat. Tell me more.
Telling.
And that Ferguson thing I was very interested in.
Well, is there not a fatal flaw in the Ferguson thing in that he did think and assume that he was superior to literally everybody that he came in contact with all day, every day, apart from maybe his wife at the start of the day and at the end of the day? Everybody else was viewed as a subject to be managed, maintained, wrung dry, and then tossed aside.
Well, wasn't that they said about the Kenny Dalglish relationship that he had? That was one of the few people that he did feel at the very best equal to, but maybe even inferior to, because Dalglish was such a superior player and also quite a successful manager in his own right, certainly in the early to mid-90s. From 95 onwards, Ferguson had it to himself. But what he did with Liverpool as player manager and then Blackburn in 95, there was that feeling out there that Ferguson felt a bit intimidated by Dalglish, and also in the initial Champions League days with United when they went to Lodge.
Yeah.
That he would be like, okay, these are proper coaches I'm up against here, like Capello and Lippi, and I need to act
fair
like
enough.
that.
And I think that certainly drove the obsession to eventually win the Champions League. But I do feel like if he's in a room with journalists who he feels comfortable banning he feels comfortable stopping them do their job, then that's not unconscious at all. That's like I'm going to man spread here, guys.
But you're doing it unconsciously there.
You're going to pay attention.
It does look good, doesn't it? Like, it's like,
no,
I don't care.
No, it does not look good.
No, but like, it's like, I don't care what anyone thinks. Do you know?
Does one have to behave and think and act that way in order to be incredibly generationally successful?
No,
I don't think so.
No, you don't need to. Andy Farrell.
I was just going to transition to Andy Farrell. Going to say Farrell.
There's a little trick. I was there the day Andy Farrell became Ireland coach at Abbottstown, and he did a press conference. I feel like it was around Christmas, but he brought there was maybe around 10 of us sitting around a round table, and
post World Cup, all right,
possibly, yeah. And he gave us all Ferrero Rocher, like a packet of Ferrero Rocher. He had one for every journalist that was there. This is classy and impressive. Yeah. It was just little things like that I was like, this guy's going to be good.
Just bear in mind that there was a lot of people early on going, oh, this is no good, this is out of his depth. And it's like, I don't hear so much of those people sticking to that opinion anymore. And in fairness, they were wrong.
It's kinesics, isn't it? The study of body language. Kinesics. I'm gonna look that up, but I'd like to do a course on it.
Do you know what? I watched An Irish Goodbye last night.
I meant to watch it.
It's brilliant. It's like it's straight in at number one of the three. That and On Colin Kuhn are 1 and 1A, and then obviously Banshees is trailing in third.
What's about two brothers rekindle? Their mother dies or something? Is that
yeah. So the opening scene is them with the ashes in the car, going back to The one brother lives in England, and the other was on the farm with the ma, and now they're going to ship the brother who was living at home off to live with an aunt.
Right.
And the brother is going to feck off back to England and live his life. So, and that's I'm not giving anything away because that's all set up.
Spoilers.
But the other big thing coming out of the Oscars was, of course, we're supposed to be outraged. We are supposed to be absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not outraged, you're not paying attention, was basically the messages that I've been getting for the last 24 hours. Saturday Night Live did their usual, the Irish are drunk and
Did you
hard
see that,
to.
by the way?
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah.
I didn't see it. But they've been making the same shticky joke for 20 years on Saturday Night Live. And I mean, I don't know. Are you all of. Anyway, top of the moron. This is it. And Jimmy Kimmel is next. Apparently, he's also guilty. This is the front of the Irish Daily Star. Irish Star is baffled by Kimmel's paddywhackery at Oscars bash. Now, paddywhackery is, what Banshees of Inisherin was the vast majority of our nominations. Right, the Banshees of Inisherin. So we're supposed to be offended at paddywhackery. It's okay when we do it, or if you're like English and you do it, but you hire a lot of Irish people to do it for you. But top of the moron, right? Jimmy Kimmel has been slated for a string of lame jokes poking fun at Irish stars as he hosted the Oscars. That's the front of the paper. On the back of the paper is Mac Hansen talking about being unable to concentrate in the captain's meeting last year in Dublin because it was Paddy's weekend and there was a drunken brawl going on outside the hotel, and they're like, what's going on over here? What's this? We've got to pay attention to this. Shut up, whoever the captain. It would have been Sexton for the last game. Was Sexton? Sexton's there like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go after Finn Russell in their back row. You got to be smothering them. And Matt Hansen and the boys are like, eyes to the window going, there's a brawl going. Watch this, the guy over there hasn't done anything yet. Keep an eye on him. And then an ambulance comes because there's somebody sparked out cold. Mac Hansen's revealing the details.
Happy Paddy's Day.
Top of the moron, though, we're supposed to be outraged when somebody says that we're, prone to drunkenness. I mean, I don't know. Is this a little bit?
We don't. But that could have been we don't know.
They could have been tourists.
Well, they could have been tourists.
They could have been tourists. They're the only ones who were in Dublin. We don't even know it was in Dublin. It was in a hotel in Ireland. It could have been any of the hotels that the rugby team stay in.
I
or they might have just been visiting for the day.
There's a scale, isn't there? Like, if the Americans kind of slag off the Irish affinity to drink, we don't really mind. But if the English do it, we're like, hold on a minute now, lads. Shut up.
No, I just think it has to be funny. That's all it is. If it's not,
But
funny,
that's
it. It's just we don't mind being slagged off at all if it's funny.
The skit wasn't. So for people who haven't seen the skit, Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell, the actors who play them, walk out and they do actually look quite like as SNL tend to do. But they start speaking gibberish because that's the way Irish people talk and no one can understand what they're saying. And then they walk away and the presenters are like, and they haven't even started drinking yet. The usual.
Crowd lap it up, which is fair enough. But it's funny because they're two of our more articulate people, really. I mean, Farrell, they're so eloquent, the two of them, the way they speak. So it's funny that they picked on those two. But I guess that's part of the joke as well. But yeah, it just kind of has to be funny. Also, Mac Hansen just sounds so excited. He hasn't played England yet.
I know.
Bear that in mind.
I do think though that it's like we're supposed to be outraged about this, and then actually, you know what? I mean,
are you allowed to get outraged by it?
I don't.
Bit of paddywhackery.
I think that
or outraged by the lack of comedy.
First off, yes, right. That is fundamentally that's the important thing. If you're trying to make a joke, it should be funny. Yeah. It shouldn't be shit.
What's the if they start slagging the famine or the Spuds? What's the cut-off point?
No, I don't have it. Like, why are you getting upset at what somebody else thinks of you?
True. Yeah.
You read all these self-help books, surely. I don't care. You think what you want. It reveals your character. That's what that is.
I don't need self-help book. They're a load of crap. Self-help book.
That body language there with the itching, as you said it.
Yeah. Nah, they are a load of crap.
Were you not just?
I don't need someone to tell me how to feel.
We all do. We all do.
I know
sometimes
the
thing. You can't. Introspection only goes so far.
Motivational quotes.
Yeah, that's what I live by. I Google it every so. Yeah, just go and Google images there. Motivational quotes.
They do help. Yeah,
you get some lovely ones.
In fact, I just go out and look at space, look at the stars at night time. That helps me. Each to their own.
Sorry, it's 7:40 this morning. I should just tell everybody we're going to have Ronan O'Gara and Matt Williams on the show a little bit later on. John Duggan is at Cheltenham. Plenty more coming your way as well, including some Tommy Walsh goodness around about 9:30. Cheltenham starts today. Is everybody excited?
Buzzing.
Some week for Ireland, isn't it?
Lads.
My God,
I forgot the Champions League was on tonight because of Cheltenham and because of the Six Nations.
Cheltenham Grand Slam Paddy's Day. Yeah, at Cheltenham, it is exciting. Shane, you were telling me beforehand, big fan?
Big fan of Cheltenham. It's that week where myself and my friends become experts on horse racing for 1 week only. In complete antithesis to all of those brilliant horse racing journalists in Ireland out there, John Duggan being one of them, who live and breathe this stuff for the rest of the 11 months and 3 weeks of the year. So yeah, I really enjoy it. We usually go to the pub on Paddy's Day and prop up at the bar, pint of stout, put on the old little small bet or two, and enjoy the day. So yeah, it's a brilliant week, and to be Irish as well on Cheltenham week when we destroy the English inevitably. It just adds to it. Pressbury Cup is like the easiest trophy of all time. It's nearly like, did someone say yesterday, the Six Nations has 9 trophies and there are only 6 teams in it. So I mean that's a lot of crap.
They don't really. I mean, the Quitch isn't really a trophy. It's just it's a token of something to say that there's a game here and let's have a. It's not a trophy.
Is there any need for it though?
Well, it's just. But what's wrong with it? Why are you getting upset about it?
Well, Triple Crown, great. Grand Slam, fantastic. Six Nations Championship, yeah, understandable. But like,
here's the thing:
play them every year.
Like the Calcutta Cup, they play them every year, but it's only once a year that they play it. And so once a year, you play this team, and there's a thing to signify it, and it's like a thing that they hand over at the end, and it's no big deal.
The thing is, the Six Nations Championship or the Grand Slam or the Triple Crown.
Yeah,
we're going to get something by beating those teams anyway.
It's really smart. Do you know
why?
It increases motivation. You have
players
so
don't
many
give
options
a
to win. There's so
crap.
many options to win trophies. People love winning trophies.
No.
It's
Did you see the photo of the Irish players holding the centenary
You are
great?
presented with the trophy.
They looked like they were handed an urn of their dog.
Self-esteem wise,
They
self-help book.
looked like they were handed
Skyrockets.
an urn of their dog's ashes, Colm.
Skyrockets.
That's what they were handed. They looked
trophy.
depressed.
You're being
and sad.
sidetracked. You're being sidetracked. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
That's my point. It's irrelevant.
But then don't.
Why are they handing it out?
Don't get worried about it. Don't. You're sweating the small stuff here.
I know. But
You're accepting the talking points of morons.
9 trophies.
That's what's
for
happening.
6 teams.
Oh, I can't believe this is going on. It's like, you just ignore it there. You go back to being little insular and only interested in your thing. That's fine, and that's your life. That's fine.
I gotta go back to self-help books, I think, to calm myself down. But
Mark Your Cards is our daily podcast for Cheltenham, hosted by John Duggan. It's available in your podcast feed right now if you want some good advice. John will be with us a little bit later on, around about 8:50 this morning. You can subscribe to Mark Your Card in the OTB daily feed. It'll drop before 6 o'clock every morning this week, so you can listen to it on your way into work and have some good quality advice. I think the ghost of Manu Tuilagi is something that I'm not sure that we woke up this morning to Tuilagi's back just for Ireland.
Yeah.
Manu Tuilagi never lost against Ireland.
6 tests, 6 wins against Ireland. Finished his 3-week ban.
There's a curve that you go on in match weeks, which like takes you all the way up to either intense levels of excitement and anticipation just before kickoff or absolute fear. And I started off the week after the Scotland game on the intense level of excitement for the home Grand Slam, and now the S curve is hitting the top, and it's
you're confident.
Manu Tuilagi news this morning. Like, Manu Tuilagi has literally finished the careers of some of Ireland's best ever players, like with his sheer physical force. I'm like, don't like this. Even, the new coaching ticket in England is going to take its time to, but
I don't know.
There's a ghost.
I don't think the physicality, like, so you look at the size of some of those Scotland lads last weekend, and then the Irish players laughing at half time in there going, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, but haven't had like several of our best players knocked out.
Yeah, but like the fact that they were able to respond to that.
Yeah, but they won't be able to respond to it again. Say we lose another 5 players in the first 40 minutes.
Well, you hope that's
well, suddenly we're not bringing off like a bunch of lions from the bench. We're bringing off players who aren't starting for their provinces. And obviously our mentality monsters is that's all well and good, but Manu Tuilagi is just a little bit of a ghost.
Yeah,
not a big fan of seeing ghosts on the pitch.
The psychological preparation for this game too would be more akin to the Italy build-up, wouldn't it? In terms of form, like 'cause into the Italy game, Ireland was like, well, it's a matter of how much you're going to win by, and that really is what people are talking about here against England. Whereas the build-up to Scotland was like, this is going to be a serious test. Now, if you listen to Andy Dunn, of course, again, correctly predicting they're going to win to the T, 15 points. But the talk was Scotland are going to give us a serious game, and in the first half, that was very much the case.
They did, yeah.
The talk at the moment, so far this week, is what's the earliest that we can start celebrating this match against England? Because the result is inevitable. But that is what people are saying, because England were so catastrophically poor against France, even though France were amazing. And Ireland are the best team in the world. So therefore, this is a procession, isn't it? Isn't it?
The Cork came out there.
And then you realise that there's like a bunch of angry full-time professionals who have an opportunity to turn not just their season, but in some cases their careers around. Like if England were to win this game, all of a sudden, that many of those England players, they're saying that some England players' careers will be over if they lose in a similar manner to what happened. So they are cornered.
There's so much on the line for England. They can't get demolished again.
I think, look, home advantage is massive here. I know Roy Keane says, sure, the fans don't win the match, but like, it's going to have a massive impact.
Can you imagine? Marcus Smith has already said there's no better week than this than a free swing in Ireland.
Oh,
that's Marcus Smith.
He won't get the swing. He'll be on the bench.
If Owen Farrell comes back in as well, Tuilagi comes back in, these are like winning mentalities. If
slightly underrated aspect of the whole Owen Farrell situation is that we're talking about Ireland having the top 2 point scorers in the history of the Six Nations locked forever at the moment on 557 points. Owen Farrell is only 35 points behind.
He's going to hold the record for a long time, I'd say, Owen Farrell, isn't he?
Well, I don't know. He might. The Marcus Smith era might start immediately after the World Cup. So this could be his last Six Nations game.
Imagine Ireland are 2 points up.
Don't.
In the 78th minute.
Colm.
And
you don't have to say it.
Owen Farrell gets a penalty for England.
And misses it.
And looks up at Andy in the stands.
Andy nods.
Kicks it. Whew, there could be so much on the line.
Pulls it left and wide.
Owen Farrell's only 31, so I don't think he's gone anywhere anytime soon.
No. Oh, lads, I'm nervous. Jesus. Sorry, at home, do we, the way it's Ireland's call at the moment, does Iron Levine get played as well at home, or is that completely gone?
Oh no, of course it does, yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's only at the away games that Ireland's call is the only option, yeah.
But also you look, and like the other reason too that this should be a procession really is the record at the Aviva under Andy Farrell. They've won their last 13 home tests. They've won 19 of their 26 Nations games at the Aviva under Andy Farrell. They've only lost twice in the last couple of years, and this is the most out of sorts we've ever seen England.
Yeah. All signs point. I mean,
sorry, are we sleepwalking into the performance aspect of this? As pundits, not as the players, I'm
fans are, obviously everybody is like, oh, where are you having your Grand Slam party? Where's the best place to have a Grand Slam party? What snacks do you need for your Grand Slam party? It's almost like it's a Super Bowl type. So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different, I presume, for the players.
If you said on paper, oh, Henderson's out, Guy Ringrose is out, you're like, oh, we're screwed. But then you see Henshaw coming in.
But I mean, today will be
the
first, I suppose, proper day training ahead of the match after the recovery, and I'm sure that will be the talk, won't it? About complacency and avoiding it.
Yeah.
I'm sure the players will have a cover, but it does feel the talk of it so far.
But they've been favourites for every single game in the Six Nations so far.
Yeah, I don't know.
If, but it was different for the France build-up, as this is going to be incredibly tight. Scotland, favourites, but it's going to be very difficult at Murrayfield. Wales is the first game. The only game really that's similar to this, I think, is the Italy build-up.
Yeah, and we didn't pick our full team for the Italy game.
Yeah. So
look, we'll get into the specifics of team selection for this week and the depth. It was interesting, that Ross Maloney has been called up, but Treadwell was already in the squad, so you think that that's the depth chart there, and he played really well when he was called on, and maybe it's another opportunity for him to remind everybody that he should be getting more game time when he goes back to Ulster and it gets to be first choice. So,
do you know what's getting completely lost in all of this? All the excitement. We're very rugby heavy for the next hour on the show, of course, quite rightly. All the stuff that's happening. Cheltenham, Paddy's Day. The Champions League resumes tonight. I need to forget about it. Manchester City 1-1 against Leipzig. Pep Guardiola has come out and called out Kevin De Bruyne. Get back to basics, Kev. Even though he's our top assistant maker again this season with 13. Get back to basics, Kev. We need you. You need to be better than this. But it's 1-1 with Leipzig. That's finally poised.
Feeling the pressure. Tonight is there. It's the big one for them. They have to win the Champions League this season.
If they get
Erling
knocked
Haaland
out
is in
tonight and they win the Premier League, it's not a successful season.
I think that in normal circumstances you'd say they don't really have to win it right now. They're always going to be amazing. They've got a great young crop of players coming through, but given the financial situation and given the investigations that are happening, there is a possibility that they don't have the same team ever again, that it is now or never for Manchester City. And their performance in the first leg was pretty flaky.
Yeah,
it was a stereotypical European performance from Manchester City where they allowed a supposedly inferior team to create chances and take those chances. And I don't feel anyway confident that they're going to sweep Leipzig aside with a 2 or 3-0. Now maybe they score an early goal and everybody performs and we get to see the best of them. And there's a period now where they put down their best football and that sweeps them to glory in two fronts. But we'll see. It ain't a shoe-in for sure. If you're a Man City fan, we'd love to hear from you this morning. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. you can leave a comment in the YouTube stream, or of course you can always get us on Twitter at OffTheBallAM. Now, at 10 to 8 this morning, I'm delighted to say Ronan O'Gara is with us. Ronan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger Shane.
Morning.
I don't know how much you know about the 1972 Miami Dolphins. Given that you nearly played for them, I presume they're one of your favourite stories. So, they for the uninitiated, they went through the whole season unbeaten and won the Super Bowl. And so every year, whenever the last team who were unbeaten would lose a game, they'd get together and drink champagne. So I presume when Johnny was coming off, not having broken your record at the weekend, you were popping the champagne corks and going, I'm still the record holder.
No. It was, I suppose, when you see it in writing and you're the viewer watching it, it kind of reinforces the great times in an Irish jersey. The 557 points in the Six Nations is quite incredible. So Johnny will go on to break that this weekend, and he's fully deserving of that. And I'm 46. I think I'm just very grateful, genuinely, and to see someone who has, started his international career or whatever he was, 24, I think, was it, and then getting better every year. It's records are there to be broken. I gave it everything when I was playing, and I think it's very special having two Irish people there.
Unfortunately, Owen Farrell is only about 30 points behind you and has about 5 years left, it looks like. So we should enjoy
that's
this.
That's exactly it, yeah, you're right. And I knew it would be Ger Gilroy that came in with that, because you just like pointing out things factually, which is very important, taking all the emotion out of it. And I agree with that. And
there's an undercurrent of you're a bit of an asshole, I have to say, with that one, Ronan, but thanks very much.
No, not at this lie. I sometimes it's when you get out of Ireland and you leave the emotion behind it, you got to see it as pure factual, and that's the proper observation in what it is. It's just you're playing an individual sport sometimes when you're going after those kind of personal records, and I do agree with Jenny what he said, like the Grand Slam on Saturday will be so much more fulfilling than being, I think, top point scorer. Yeah, that's a personal goal achieved, but that satisfaction with your teammates is huge. I wouldn't underestimate that.
If Ger is the robot about it, I'd like to be the romanticist about it. Like this is the golfer hitting 59. Like it's Ronnie O'Sullivan hitting his 1000th century break, Ronan. You got to enjoy these records, and like I'm sure you did at the time, but it's just one of those moments that I'm sure.
I wasn't aware, honestly. I had no idea, because I think it wasn't spoken about, it was probably when you retire you're aware of what you did. Nowadays, obviously, when they're there and they're targeted, it becomes, I suppose, relevant. But being the top point scorer in the Six Nations is something that is huge.
It's easier to break them as well rather than set them, isn't that right?
No, I wouldn't say that. You know what I mean? You've got to understand, Johnny's 37. He's been a model of consistency. He's driven. He's hugely hungry, and he's fully deserving. That I genuinely mean that. I think, when you have, achieve what I have in the game, and it's not about I and thing, but like with the run you had with Munster, with Ireland, the points in the European Cup for me would be something that would be very, very, very difficult to beat, I think, for a young kid. And you combine them all, and that's what makes me so happy for Johnny this weekend, because I posted my target in Europe, in the World game, in the club game, and now it's someone else's time to shine. And as I said, at 46, it'd be different if the record was broken within 3 weeks. But you got to be so appreciative of this, and in the special players you play with and the times you play with. And now Johnny's going to have that record, and he's going to break some other records as well that I had. But there'll be others he won't be able to break. But that's what sport is. That's what giving everything means. And I just sometimes feel that people get bitter about these kind of things, but I'd be actually the opposite of it. And you might say that's easy for me to say on live and air, but I genuinely do feel like that. completely transformed in that regard from, I suppose, going into the coaching side of it. And you don't want to put a limit on people, let them go and express themselves. And I think you could see that's why Ireland won at the weekend too, in the fact that it's this no excuses mentality, whatever it takes, and they get the job done.
Can I just to labour the point about Sexton as the captain, right? I wasn't sure if he was going to make the captain that he has become. Certainly at the start, where there's the shot of him looking up at the board when he's getting subbed off, and he seems unhappy, and just the talk to the referees was a little bit different from the way it is now. He's completely matured as a captain. Now, maybe that was always going to happen, and that's just how difficult it is. But it seems from the outside like there's a humility there, where he went off and studied how to get better at being captain, the same way he did at becoming a better 10. And really, we shouldn't have doubted. I certainly should not have had the doubt that I did at the start. I'm not sure he's going to be the great captain. Why don't we go with like one of the back rows or James Ryan and just skip a generation?
It's a great question. I think you're right, Ger, but I think he's been shaped, and I think that's what the environment has done to him too. I think in the fact that, it was in France away, was it, when he had a poor reaction to being substituted, and at the time there was comments about it, and but the bottom line is you cannot do that when you're the captain, and because it just gives, if that's what the captain does, imagine what a player can do. It leaves that open. So he went away, had a look, and he reshaped himself, and I think that's a credit to Andy Farrell and I suppose the environment he has created in his team. And it's one person can do it, and I think you can underestimate his role, but it would be very, very foolish to underestimate what he has done. Obviously Johnny is very, very diligent, very intelligent, very smart, and he went away, but it also takes a team effort to kind of get him to where he is today. And you are right, because he was a spiky character, but his capacity to remain an insane competitor, but also to be able to communicate without a nasty tone is so important, and there is no nastiness in his tone at the minute. And as a result, Ireland are you look at the weekend, I think Scotland were marched back for 10 metres on 2 occasions. That's huge in a test game. And normally it would be easy to associate that with Johnny, but that's all removed from his game. And the mental side of the game, Ireland are very, very strong and very, very performing.
There was a moment in the game of the weekend, or a couple of moments, Ronan, where Johnny took a couple of kicks, and it was certainly audible through the television that there was a bit of maybe we'll call it not respect for the kicker during those moments for Johnny at Murrayfield. Now, Tom English was on with us yesterday from the BBC, and he was kind of saying he couldn't really sense that in the stadium, but there was certainly a smirk from Johnny a couple of times when he went to pick up the tee and face the crowd. Like Tom was making the point that sometimes kickers prefer the little bit of noise, the little bit of aggro, the bite, the abuse nearly being hurled at them while they're kicking, and they rise to that. Were you a kicker that preferred that quiet or the little bit of bite coming at you from the away fans?
Yeah, I suppose because in Thomond Park it was complete and utter silence, and that was my norm, and that's something that spooks a lot of kickers, especially French kickers that came to Thomond Park, because in France, I suppose the norm wouldn't be silence. The unwritten rule is you can do basically whatever you want when the opposition are having a shot at goal. So there's anything goes, So from that point of view, you have to be prepared for everything. For me, and where Johnny is at his stage of the career too, it doesn't matter what people are doing. You have your routine, you snap into that 45-second routine, and you could be in your back garden, you could be in front of 180,000 people. It doesn't matter. You kind of switch into your process and away you go. Whether people are having a hullabaloo or losing the plot with you, that's their issue. You know what you're kind of doing. You have a few little cues and you stick to them, and the ball usually goes over the bar.
Can we just talk a little bit about the environment? it's hard for us to talk enough about what Andy Farrell has done when you consider the pathway that he's come through, where he was definitely embedded with the team, obviously, and central to the team when Joe Schmidt was there. But to take over and to go through the difficult period he had at the start, but at the same time to remain consistently true to what his principles were, while bringing on like world-class coaching talent that many other coaches might have been afraid to bring on because of, you know, the potential for somebody on the team to replace you. There's a humility there, there's a self-confidence there, there's an emotional intelligence, which is, I think, underrated in terms of the things that we talk to him about. And then there's also, we don't really know him very well. He hasn't done long interviews, he hasn't appeared on telly doing stuff. We see the press conferences and he keeps himself in a way public but private, but I suspect that what we see is actually the reality of it. So I don't know, can you talk to us a little bit about your impressions of the job that Farrell has done?
Done an amazing job, and his record obviously is astounding. And I think also the fact that what's great is that I think what the public here is Andy Farrell. I think I was lucky enough in my playing days to go over to a St. Helens game, and I think when you go over there you can appreciate that they're hard working, that they're humble, that they're respectful, that it's a different part of the world, but he's very much grounded in that rugby league background, which is similar to Sean Edwards. Everything starts and finishes with hard work. Everything is about honesty, everything is about discipline, but it's about being yourself. And I think even at the start he wasn't flustered by that. I think he believed in himself, and that's what he's done all his life. I think his background is one of the best players ever to play the rugby league game, and then he flirted with rugby union, made a good go at that. But he's of that Wigan team where it was probably an incredible Wigan rugby league team, and I think he was playing for Great Britain when he was 17, so he was a freak of a player. But then he did his stages as an assistant coach. I think his principles are very simple, but he's also been very consistent, and he just wants people to be themselves. And what's probably underappreciated in that is that, an Andrew Porter to a Johnny Sexton is very, very different, but he's let the two of them be who they are to get the best out of them. For Tyke Furlong to come into the leadership group, to not miss a beat when he comes back in his first game, looks like he's playing for the last 6 weeks, because he wants people to express themselves, and expressing themselves looks very differently, but he's created a kind of a game where he wants flow, and with I suppose their understanding of the game plan, and not being a complex game plan, but based around work rate, about discipline, around having the capacity to play what they see, makes Ireland hugely threatening. The Hansen try in the right-hand corner, for example, there's very little on, but Hugo Keenan obviously throws out an absolutely brilliant pass where Hansen doesn't break stride, but you probably in the past would have seen Ireland probably make a ruck in the 22 as opposed to just being able to pull the trigger and back themselves. And that's, I suppose, where this team is now. We've talked in the show about confidence and what it means, players with confidence. But what Ireland have at the minute, they have momentum and they have confidence in every position from 1 to 23, and it's powerful. And yet, at 8-7, Scotland had a great opportunity to create doubt in Ireland's mind, especially with losing two of their hookers. But that's what separates, I think, good from great teams, is that Scotland came up with forward passes for weak moments of play that essentially gave Ireland the initiative. And within 3 minutes, there was a different look in the game, and that they are big moments. You look at, I think when Van der Merwe went through, he has two people free outside him, and he decides to tuck the ball. If that was an Irish player, I think that's a pass, and Ireland or Scotland stroll in for a try with a two-man overlap, and Van der Merwe's defending against Conan is a 3-on-3. There's no threat whatsoever. Steps in, gets beaten. If it was at club level, you'd be extremely disappointed. But that's 14-point swing where, yes, Ireland were by far the better team in those moments of turning pressure into points. But at times in this game, Ger, I felt that this could get away from Ireland. This could get away from Ireland pretty easily, but that's where they show their class.
In those moments where you thought that this could get away from them, was it Scotland missing the opportunity as much as Ireland? So, like, I guess if you're Andy Farrell and you're sitting coldly today going, well, we got away with one there, and so there's loads to work on, whereas we're all like, oh, this is amazing, we're going to win the Grand Slam, we just need to show up. And they're like, no. There's about 15 or 16 areas that we need to work on this week that are part of our continuum.
Yeah, there was some big moments, I think, when you look at Scotland in the first half. For example, the last play before half-time when the line out deep in the right-hand side and they got 1 metre from the line, and then I think Keenan came in and he had picked 2 men and he hit the second last, which stopped the try. But before that, Scotland had an opportunity, and that's a different game. If Scotland scored just before half-time, it's a huge boost to them. But there are definitely areas, I would say, when Scotland had the ball that Ireland looked condensed in defence, and that's something they look at. If they don't get their spacing right, no matter against which team, it will make for a difficult afternoon because of the quality of attack out there. But Scotland, I think, are a better team than England, and especially Scotland playing at home. They're huge, I suppose, advantage and carrot to go after Ireland. But Ireland, what great teams can do is that they can step it up, and they kill them within a 3-minute period. But I think it's still on the day in sport. People think, okay, this team just shows up and they win. You can't say that, I think, at all, because there were so many good things Ireland did at the weekend that they need to repeat to be good. Obviously, at home it'll be different because I think the England team are at they've never hit a low like they have at the minute. So they have significant problems. They looked like a team that had only come together for the first time, and you can never say that. At least with England, you're probably guaranteed a physical game. There was no physicality in their performance against France, which was very, very surprising.
Manu Tuolagi's going to be back for the weekend. Owen Farrell's going to be back for the weekend. It's suddenly a different team. I mean, obviously, it's not that different. They can't fix that in one go, but there'll be some physicality in the early stages, at least from those two.
Yeah, but you've spoken about 2 backs, Ger. The game is one up front. Numbers 1 to 8 is where you need to set a platform, or you need to establish, I suppose, what your values are and how you want to play the game. So, like, in that regard, there's probably, they will be deeply criticised from their performance at the weekend. Now, you may see a different, I suppose, spark, response, reply from the English pack, but like from people who have been watching England for a long time, and for me, I was shocked at, I suppose, the lack of bite from them, because that's normally what you associate with English teams in Twickenham, that they'll be very, very physical from 1 to 8. They were not like that against France.
One positive from an Irish perspective, Ronan, heading into that game of the weekend is how they reacted to adversity. Like, when you see so many players going off injured, players being played out of position, it probably surprised all of us who haven't played top level rugby when you see someone like Cian Healy down as a designated hooker, when you see Van der Fleer throwing at the line out as well. But probably to someone like yourself who's involved at top level rugby, it's not that surprising. I'm sure these guys have every single possible eventuality marked out and prepped for.
Yeah, but marked out is one thing. Being able to actually transfer it in the heat of the moment is another thing. You look at, for example, a good example of that is Cian Healy at hooker when he took the free kick and he forgot to tap the ball. It's unfortunate, but like, Cian, are you okay on that? Because he knows his role, but like, he actually forgot to tap it with his foot, which can happen to anybody. And as a coach, I'm sure the Irish management team had a little giggle about that, because that just shows that You know what I mean? We're never bulletproof in these kind of things, but what's very evident in this Irish squad for me is it's probably a collaborative approach, if that's the right word, and the fact that it's shared responsibility, from the fact that it doesn't seem to be any big difference between staff and players. This responsibility seems shared. If you hear what they said, like at half-time, they were laughing. That's fantastic, in the fact that, yeah, we've recognised, okay, we're in a bit of a hole here. We've lost our 2 hookers. So the opposite of laughing is being fear, is tensing up, is panicking, while they actually just embraced it for what it was. Okay, lads, this is exactly something that we can either embrace and we can have a crack off with a smile on our face, or else we can go, oh, this won't work, you know. But they actually just, probably because of Farrell, obviously have an environment where they're able to make jokes, and that's very important. They're able to be themselves. They say, yeah, okay, we're in a test match away from home, a grand slam on the line here. Come on, boys, let's find a solution to this. Let's have a crack off it. And that's exactly what they did. But put that on the flip side, if you can be in the Scotland management and you know that you have a substitute hooker and you haven't blocked off the first point of source of ball, you would be deeply frustrated.
Oh yeah,
deeply frustrated.
Yeah, and it feels like the post-mortem in Scotland is going to go on a long time, hopefully all the way through to after the World Cup. Ronan, I know we're out of time, but just very briefly, you're in all the papers today in England, linked with Jack Noel. Is that a done deal? Is that signed, sealed and delivered?
No.
Nice quick answer.
Will it be?
Talks are in place.
All right, okay, we'll leave it there for now. Good stuff,
Thank
Ron.
you.
Enjoy the game.
Cheers,
Thanks a
boys.
million. Cheers. 11 minutes past 8 this morning.
Good mood. Yeah, he's put me in a good mood for the weekend now. Excited.
The Miami Dolphins thing is, I think they've stopped doing it now because they're all too old. But
So why do they do the champagne?
every year? Because they're the only ones with the record.
Right, yeah,
the record is unbroken.
Pre-Super Bowl champagne?
Well, whenever so most seasons somebody gets to 6-0, 7-0, 8-0, and then they start gathering, getting ready to. I think it's a local TV station who like, hey lads, we'll throw a party for you, and then that becomes a thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really interesting and important point to make, is that if you talk to players immediately after they retire, a lot of them are like, I didn't really want the team to win that season, but then they go through this process of slowly becoming a fan again, and then they're just fans like everybody else. That was the thing that sucked them in as a kid. They get to that elite level, they want to be part of everything that happens. There's a period of like anger and bitterness, the grief curve, and then it's like, actually, you know what, I'm just a fan again, I really want them to win.
Well, like you get that. Like Kieran Whelan is a perfect example. Like you don't want the Dubs to win the All-Ireland the very year after you retire. You know, same with Ronan. Ronan said the same on the show before, but a couple of years down the line, when you're a bit more removed, I think you can accept it maybe.
Yeah, I think that is all totally fine. Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month, so visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. After this short break, Matt Williams.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. Off the Ball Daily.
A home for your favourite podcasts from Off the Ball. The performance rankings, a slight tangent, the crappy quiz, and you had to be there.
You have to be there, like, but I wish I wasn't there, you know.
Subscribe to the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed right now.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, 13 minutes past 8. Matt Williams is with us to continue the rugby conversation. Matt, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. Good morning, Shane.
We've just been talking to Ronan O'Gara there about the complete lack of physicality that England showed against France, which when you think about it, at home against France and the record they had, it's kind of shocking that they didn't land a punch at any stage, even when they went 7-0 down after a minute and a half, whatever it was, that they weren't able to kind of regroup and regather. They're going to have a week to lick their wounds and to come to Dublin to try and spoil our party. If you're in that England camp, what are you saying to try and make sure that some kind of performance results this weekend?
Well, Ger, this is an England team that has had systemic problems for a considerable period of time. This isn't like something that's just popped up. Now, their performance last Saturday was the worst I've seen from an England team. I was actually thinking about this afterwards. When Clive Woodward took over before the 1999 World Cup, England were at a low ebb. He brought England to Australia, and I went to a test match there. I think I was still coaching the Waratahs. I think it was about 97. Don't quote me on it. It might be 98, but let's say 97. And they were walloped by the Wallabies at the Olympic Stadium. It was one of the first times the stadium was open. And that's the lowest I've seen England. Now, Woodward took 6 years and got them back to win a World Cup 6 years later. Deserves a lot of credit for that. They're lower. England are lower than when Woodward took them over. They were abject, but they have been for some time. They've been on the decline for some time. And there is some, I think the problem for me lies in the assistant coaches that since Scott Wisemantel left as their attack coach, they have deteriorated. And they have people there coaching that are not being effective. You're not seeing the coaching being transferred from the training ground to the pitch. So they might be coaching them well, but it's not transferring. And that is the term we use in coaching, is the transference from the pitch to the actual performance. I thought they were going to lose and lose poorly, but they were worse than I expected them to be. I think there was huge ignorance, just all the talk and hype about Smith and Farrell. Smith and Farrell was never about Smith and Farrell. And it was about all the systemic problems and England's inability to match opposition forwards. And the great example of that is Maro Itoje, who has been a superb athlete for them for many years. And Maro was he was anonymous on the field the other day. So, yes, their lack of physicality was horrific. Do I expect a response? Look, I don't think they can get any worse. I really don't think they can get any worse. Now, we've got to say France played a part here. France were quite magnificent. But I don't think they can get any worse. If that's our team I'm involved with, the senior players say to the coach, go out of the room. It's got nothing to do with you. Close the door, and there's a bit of finger pointing going on and a serious honesty about what happened in that game. The English back row were just appalling. Like, there was the statistics that come up about ball carries, offloads, tackles made, contacts, turnovers. You've got the French back row in numbers like 8, 10, 12, 7, 6, and you've got the English back row on duck egg 2, duck egg 4. It wasn't like the French won it on a points decision. This was just so one-sided. It was horrific. And those guys need calling out. And they need to be told, listen, you're wearing the national jersey, and even that national jersey with a little red all over it didn't look particularly good. The French even looked better than it, but you're wearing the national jersey. You have to do much better. This is what I mean systemic. Their attacking system is hopeless. It's just non-existent. I can't tell you what they're doing in attack. I just can't see it. Their defensive system leaked like a sieve. And then their kicking game was appalling. Whatever their kicking strategy was certainly suited France. Then you say, well, what did each individual bring to the game? The individuals were just awful. And everyone's trying to blame Marcus Smith. And I thought Smith tried his heart out. It's not Marcus Smith's fault, that game. So on all these fronts, England have got battles. And Borthwick is really, he has really got some chaos management on his hands here, because it is very, very bad.
So in a crisis like that, what do you do? Do you just make sure that the game plan is the most simplified game plan that these players have ever experienced, so there's no thought going into it, and you try and play at some level of unconsciousness?
Yes, you do. And that's a hard question to answer, Ger, because I don't know what they've been doing at training. Again, they've obviously tried to put some form of attacking system in place and a defensive structure in place. But the players aren't transferring that. They're not carrying it. So there is real issues with the coaching staff on what are you doing. And, if you look at the last French try, which was magnificently executed, but which was the set play, line out, down to the back line, beautiful back line set play, magnificent hands across the back line, and they put Feno in the corner. What the English defensive back line was doing there we've watched go, what are they doing? Like, if your under 12s did that, your 13 comes out of line, turns his shoulders towards the ball goes past him, it's a try every time. Now, Gary Ringrose, the way Ireland defend, the way Leinster defend, the way, I would coach defend, they'd never turn your shoulders in. You would be able to stay alive. So the players either panicked or they're getting coached badly. So what do you do in a day like this? Again, you've got to take personal responsibility. I thought Genge as a leader was poor. All he did was complain all day. And you could see when Farrell came on, he took control. So first thing is selections were wrong. The coach got the most powerful tool a coach has is the people he selects to go on the field. And it was obvious that selections were wrong. Is the squad wrong? Well, obviously, they're the number 9, their English number 9 was just, he's not international standard. Poor young man. I don't want to embarrass him. He's not international standard. He was slower than a month of Sundays. So Mitchell comes on, the pace picks up. So they've got their 9 wrong. They've probably got their back row wrong. They've got their centres wrong. Have they got their out half wrong? There's so many issues you could say there. And then you've got your great players like Atoje playing poorly. So you've got to, and then there's leadership. So on a week like this, in the old days, you used to go out for a beer because your coach didn't know what else to do. So we'll go out and say, guys, this isn't good enough. And sometimes that worked because people would, people joke about that, but it made people talk and it made people communicate and be honest. And that team needs some real brutal honesty. But you can also see around the media, there's not honesty. There's excuses and there's finger pointing. That is destructive. There really needs to be some brutal honesty and some commitment to the jersey and a commitment to perform. Now, I expect, it has to be a better, more physical performance than they've put in. It has to be that, because I don't think they can get any worse. That was abject and it was embarrassing and they were humiliated. Now, really good athletes and really proud athletes, they will respond to that, you would think. But can they respond in enough areas? Can they get their scrum right because their scrum was poor? Can they get their defence right? Horrific. Kicking game right? Can they get their selection right? Can they get their attack right? Like, there's so many things they have to work on. They just can't do all that in a week. So the only thing they can hope for is they turn up with a lot more courage, determination and physicality, cohesion, aggression would be another word, and pride.
Well, that's
all those things were lacking.
That's the thing, Matt. Like, you say it can't get any worse. Can it get better within the space of a week? Because, like, if you're Steve Borthwick, what are you saying to those English players this week? Like, the carrot on the end of the stick is to be the party poopers, to stop Ireland's Grand Slam in Dublin on Paddy's weekend. It's set up perfectly. But what are you saying if you're Steve Borthwick in that dressing room this week?
Well, you're saying just that. You're giving hope, you're giving leadership, and you're trying to give direction. But it's very hard. People forget that rugby players are human beings, and it's to recover emotionally from a humiliation is very hard. It takes time, just as it takes time to recover from a phenomenal win to come back to equilibrium. When you're emotionally humiliated like that in front of the world wearing your national jersey, it takes a long time to come back up to that point where you're ready to respond. So it's going to depend on the emotional recovery of the players. It's a big test of Borthwick's leadership. But again, we go back. Let's go back to November. Let's keep going back before that last year's Six Nations. Now, it wasn't as bad as we saw against France, but this has been an England team that has been slowly and inevitably moving and declining in all these systems.
That was the question.
Remember, they lost to Argentina. So it's not like, look, they've had a really bad day. This is something that's been going for a long time. And what did they do? They blamed Eddie Jones. Okay, he's the boss. Sorry, mate.
Would this have happened under Eddie Jones? Because I was asking Quinny that on Monday, and he was like, well, it's hard to know. Obviously, it's a completely hypothetical situation. There is a chance that France could have blown England out at Twickenham, even if Eddie Jones was the coach. But you suspect that whatever his long-term plan was, that wouldn't have been dismantled.
Yeah, look, I got to say, I thought Eddie Jones was treated appallingly. I thought he was made a scapegoat, and I thought it was there's a lot of anti-Australian sentiment in sporting circles in England. I just know that, and I think he was subject to a bit of that, and that's because of the huge competitiveness Australia and England have in so many sports, especially cricket. But I can tell you that that's a factor, and I would suggest to you that I've never seen a team coached by Eddie Jones perform like that. They've lost games, and I don't think England were playing particularly well under Eddie. Again, I'll tell you that the decline, in my opinion, started when Scott Wiseman left and went back to the Wallabies. And I don't think Eddie chose his assistant coaches correctly. And I don't think Borthwick has chosen his assistant coaches correctly as well. I think that is a huge issue with the England side, that they haven't got experienced long-term coaches with long-term knowledge of the game. And that is a real issue for that team. I don't think they have a philosophy on attack that Ireland have, and that is an issue, again, a massive issue. It's the mirror. If we consider where Ireland were 2 years ago, when Andy Farrell first took over, Ireland were very similar. If we think about Ireland, not as bad as what England were, they were similar. They didn't know their direction. Their performances were gone. You know, there was awful performances for 18 months under Farrell. And then he gave them a direction. The direction came from Leinster. He empowered his coaches. They had a philosophy. They followed it. Bang, instantaneous change. So what philosophy is this England team following? And I can't tell you. Everyone says, it's Leicester. It's not Leicester. And what works at club level does not necessarily work at international level. Not always. Because you've got to also say, do I have the players? Does this philosophy suit my players?
Well, that's the fundamental question, isn't it? And look, Tuilagi has never lost against Ireland. He's on the back pages of all the papers. I suspect it has been leaked that he's going to start the game. There's a consensus in the English press this morning about Tuilagi, and so that generally would suggest that someone somewhere has tipped somebody off that this is going to happen this weekend. Ben Youngs is still floating around the squad, so you could have Youngs, Farrell and Tuilagi, and all of a sudden it's players who have a lot of that experience. And do they just kick the leather off the ball and try and compete at Ireland's line out? It's going to be rainy. It's going to be a bit miserable in Dublin. It's not a plan. Hope is not a strategy, lads. That's the. Yeah. But they've got. Sorry. Do they have anything else at this stage?
No. I thought leaving Tuilagi out was a major error. He's a fine player. He gets a game line, and again we come. This is this whole thing about Smith. Let's think of Ireland against Italy. Ross Byrne, Sexton's out. Ross Byrne takes the ball to the line. He's got a player on his left. He's got a player behind in the pocket, and that player has players on his left and a player in the pocket. So if we think of Keenan's try against Italy, was exactly that. So when Ross Byrne goes to the line, there are people in motion around him. There's threats on his inside, his outside, behind him, and then the next player out. So the defence has to mark that. Smith goes to the line. He's got one player with him. He just gets smashed, and so does that player. And then that makes the ruck really slow because there's no one there to deliver quick ball. So Tuilagi would give that contact, would be a lot better. But it's not just Tuilagi. Last week, I've got to say the English press are delusional at the moment. And if they're saying last week, Marcus Smith's the answer, it's delusional. Tuilagi is the answer. It's delusional. That is one player. It is their systems that they're just not existent. So it doesn't matter who you put steering the Titanic's still going to sink. You've got to change things, and they haven't got time to change things. So what are they going to do? I agree with you. I think, it's a very limited game plan. There's going to be a lot of kicking, a lot of mauling, a lot of scrummaging, a lot of looking for penalties, and there's going to be a lot of them standing behind their try line watching Johnny Sexton kick conversions because their defensive system has been awful. And what I try and say to everyone, when I talk to you, Ger, or I'm on TV, I try and back what I'm saying on evidence. So what do I see? What evidence do I have to give an opinion, to give my opinion? So, if I saw some evidence from England, like we saw from Scotland, so why are we saying it was going to be a tough game? Because we saw some good evidence from Scotland, and the first half proved that. That's based on performance and evidence. the evidence of this English side over a long period of time is that they are really without a philosophy. They're without structure. They're without systems, and that is coming out in the players. The players are not playing with belief. They're not saying, listen, I know what my job is. What's my mission? What's my task? Do my task. Beat the guy in front of me. I'm going to do that. They're just not playing with that. So that there is the evidence that they don't have a clear picture in their head of what their mission is on each Saturday when they run out in an English jersey. So, look, Test match rugby is Test match rugby. Anything can happen. Look at the second half at Murrayfield. Look at the magnificence of that second half. Everything at halftime said Scotland are going to win. When I saw Josh Van der Fleer pick the ball up, put it behind his head to throw it in, I went, "Oh my God, how are we going to win this? We got a flanker throwing the ball in." And they found a way. Hannibal, when he took the elephants over the Alps, the general said, "Don't do it." He said, "Well, we're going to find a way or make one." And Ireland personified Hannibal, where they made a way. They didn't find a way. They made a way to get through that. And there's a team that believes in what they're doing. There's a team that has unity, that has this idea of, we have a mission here. Whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. So my mission's changed from Josh Van der Fleer. My mission is to throw the ball in the line out. And the young man was sensational. Kean Hurley comes in. My job's to scrummage here as a hooker. I haven't done this since I was a kid, but that's my mission. I'm going to do this. Porter, my mission is to do 80 minutes. I've got to do the whole game because the team needs me to do the whole game. Like, you go through everyone in that team, you could say that. Conan coming on to do that. Peter O'Mahony was immense, absolutely immense. Like, there's no one we could leave out when we talk about the performance of that team under incredible adversity. Mirror that with England. And I don't want to say so many bad things about players because I know that they can have bad days, but that's what I mean. It's humiliating for that English side when they compare themselves to what Ireland did on the following day at Murrayfield.
Well, Matt, when you say there are players in that England team that maybe aren't of international standard, and I think you might have referenced the scrum half, maybe Jack van Poortvliet being one of them who didn't have a good game at the weekend for sure, but I mean, it's a fairly damning indictment of where England are at. Like, if you have players on the pitch against France at Twickenham in a Six Nations game who aren't of international standard, like, is that on Borthwick? Is that on the RFU? Who's this? Who's to blame here?
The national coach, every national coach, is hostage to the system below them. So Andy Farrell is benefiting from a great system below him in Ireland. Eddie Jones has gone to Australia and he is hostage to that system. Australia had, I was brought up through it, one of, if not the best system in the world, because we had so few players, but we were winning World Cups. We had a great system that Australia dismantled on itself by very poor leadership. Scotland under 20s, that score was horrific. Why? Because Scotland dismantled their own system 20 years ago, dismantled the structures that produce players. So if you do that, your national team eventually is going to suffer, which Australia are doing. And Scotland are surviving because they're bringing in people from the diaspora and they're qualifying players through the residency rule. Now, the English, we saw two clubs fold. England very rarely are good at self-reflection. They either say we're brilliant or they accuse individuals like Eddie Jones and they hang them. They very rarely are self-reflective and say, what is our system doing? England should be winning the Six Nations at under 20s every single year. Ireland should not be doing what they're doing, winning Grand Slams, just for numbers. But the Irish system on talent identification, on developing that talent, on bringing it through, is superior to the English system. Now, they have players that are not at international standard. Why? Because they refuse to admit that their club system could be better. They have far too many foreigners in their system and they've had financial troubles, as we all can obviously see. There are structural problems. What philosophy are they playing? What is the school system playing? What are they? The bits of string are all at the table and none of them are joined up. But they don't reflect on that and they hate you telling them. They absolutely, and that's what Eddie was trying to say to them all the time, and they don't like that. So the English system is not going particularly well, and your national team is a reflection of that system. Every national team is. Why are France doing well? Their national system, and I'm talking here from France, is phenomenal. It's a phenomenal system, and they're doing it exceptionally well. And they're even though their top 14 is run by presidents, you can see there is a style of play in France that many of the clubs are adopting. Certainly the senior clubs like Toulouse, Ronan's club at La Rochelle, even though they have a lot of foreign players, but they're playing, the clubs that are at the top are playing magnificent style of rugby, and that's being reflected in the national team. So the English system is producing the English national team. So they're systemic, again, not just the systems of defence and so on, but the systems that produce high-performance players is not functioning at the way it should. And they had a certain number of players on the field there the other day who were not at the races. Now, we have to say that France have an incredible generation, and Antoine Dupont, I was talking about it only yesterday. I was trying to be honest. You know, he is getting up to being the best 9 I've ever seen. I was trying to think who's better. Georgie Gregan in his pomp was absolutely a genius. Marshall, you know, you start thinking, but Dupont does everything. Like in that chip and chase, that he did, he chips over with the outside of his right foot, he sprints through, regathers, still at full pace, hits the next kick in the same movement with his left foot, and the ball stops 10 centimetres from the try line. Comes out over the ruck, goes to the right. All the English defence goes to the right, steps back, kicks off his left, kicks a 50-22. French line out, they score off the line out. Like, the guy can do anything. He is an incredible footballer, and England no one has anyone like him. But you went through every position on that field. France were better, and Ireland. If we go through it, Ireland are better too. And at a certain point, that pressure builds and becomes a tsunami of pressure that teams can't stop, and you just can't see England coping this Saturday.
Matt, I hope you're dead right. Good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
See you now.
It's Matt Williams giving us some thoughts there at 8:36. Loads of comments coming through. People saying that we're setting ourselves up for a fall. We'll see. 087 918 180 is the WhatsApp number if you want to send a text or a WhatsApp to that message. That number you can. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. We'll get to them in just a couple of minutes' time. Or, of course, you can get us at Off The Ball AM on Twitter as well. Now, Derek McNamara of React Rugby is with us. Derek, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. How's it going?
Yeah, pretty good. Another winning week for us.
It continues.
Yeah, it's an irresistible force at the moment. Tell us, where are we starting? Are we starting with James Ryan?
Yeah, I thought that we were kind of looking at kind of under the radar kind of players. Now, not that James Ryan needs to be under the radar, but I suppose a lot of love had been going to the back row and to the front row. So basically, what we've done here is we've kind of looked at, you know, his contribution to the game. And
if he had just slid in with the final play of the game to wrap up the bonus point try, I think his momentum would have carried him, like the actual physical momentum there, Shane.
Yes,
would have carried him if he'd just gone to ground and slid in, and it would have finished like an All Black-esque try. That would have been one of the all-time great
Or
moments.
just recycle for another phase, and it's still a brilliant try. Do you know?
He's not finish it. I get the glory. Come on, the game's over. We've won.
I think the distinguishing difference there is that you're talking about the All Blacks and then Ireland.
Well, yeah.
I didn't think, you know, front five were supposed to pass, but, you know, it was so close. It would have been an absolutely amazing try.
It was sensational.
Anyway,
stick the stats back up for us here.
Yeah.
What does game contribution mean?
So basically, when we take everything that happens in the game between the 26 players that have, you know, been involved in the game, we then show who's the guys that are contributed the most. And then when we look at James Ryan, you know, we've got a system that allows, you know, highlights these types of, you know, situations that aren't the norm. You know, when somebody does more than they're used to or more than the average second rows, then it's highlighted to us. But the difference here is that not only did James have the most or contribute the most to the game, his quality was also off the charts. You know, from his rucking, his ball placement, his line out lifting, his line out jumping, his line out defensive jumping, his turnovers for. You know, there's all of these different things that he was involved in. Now, offloads, he only had one of them. Maybe next time. You know, yeah. But when we look at the 91 contributions that he was involved in the game, the vast majority of them were at the higher level of
Is that
accuracy.
a lot? Is 91, generally speaking, would that be a lot of contributions in a game?
For a second row, kind of, it'd
Yeah.
be reasonably high. But I suppose in this game there were so many substitutes, it brings the average of the total contribution down a little bit because there's more players involved earlier in the game. But it was just something that jumped out at, when we look at the quality and the quantity lines, he was at the top of both of those for the pack, which is unusual. And then when we also look at his performance and the quality of his performance since 2022, he's consistently got slightly better and better and better and better and better. And he's, it's exactly what you want to see,
The Lions tour to Australia, who's going to captain the team?
Oh.
Jeez, can we not get this weekend out of the way?
No. We must always be looking at the future.
Yeah.
That way you never get let down by the present.
He's definitely up there, isn't he?
We can have that conversation later in the week.
Absolutely.
Power rank the potential captains for the Lions team.
Yeah. So when we take all that information as well, and we take all of the different games that James has been involved in and his contribution throughout the entire competition, he has now moved up from second up to first of all second rows. And he's number one at carrying, he's number one at tackling, and he's number two.
This graphic we have here is for the entire tournament.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So he's the game contribution is just from this weekend, and then all back rows. He's number one at carrying,
second rows,
tackling, and lineouts.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the specifics of that. Have we more on him, or do you want to move on to Gibson Park?
Yeah, no. I suppose the next thing that we want to kind of look at is where the game was before Jemison came on. And I suppose there's always that question of how much contribution did one individual or, did an introduction of a specific player change the game. And when we look at the next slide, we can see that at the 53rd minute, I think it was, we were 8-7 up. And basically, for the people that aren't listening or watching, the graph is showing kind of the first half and the start of the second half. And Ireland's trend line of work rate is significantly dropping. So basically, and I could see it in the game. I could see it in the game as well. It was like we need to change at 9, because we need to speed the ball up, speed the game up. And basically, this graph indicates that the trend line was showing that we were significantly dropping. But then if we go on to the next slide, then we can see that the fifth section, where just after Jemison comes on, there was a massive increase in the workload of the entire team in the fifth section, to the point where it was dramatically. It was the highest.
What are these
work
numbers?
rate. So basically, this is the team's contribution in the first half and the second half. So we split our first half into 3 equal sections based on time, and we split the second half. So the game was, I think, 36 minutes of actual time of ball in play. So 18 minutes in the first half, so 3 equal sections of 6 minutes each. So in the first 6 minutes, there was 327 actions, and then in the second 6 minutes, it dropped to 219. So
this includes both sides of the ball, so it's not just that we had the ball or we didn't have the ball.
Correct. It's the overall contribution of all players in the first half and the second half.
How many times they're active doing something that you would measure?
Yeah, exactly. So this is a reasonably easy way for us to measure work rate, consistently over all teams. But when Jemison came on at the 53rd minute, we had just had our lowest work rate in a game section. And as soon as he came on, we went from 214 game sections or game activities to 363. So, massive jump in the work rate. So this is just where we're trying to,
And how do you prevent the causation and correlation issue? How do you can't directly attribute that just to him, can you?
No, well, we can, because we can actually see the speed up of the amount of time of ball in play as well. So Jemison was able to keep the ball in play for a little bit longer. He was also getting to the breakdown a little bit quicker, and he was also making the passer a little bit quicker compared to when Conor Murray came off. So all of those things together, and also it was pretty clear to me at the start of the game that they were going out to attack Van der Merwe from the start of the game. They were attacking his wing a lot. And then as soon as Jemison came on, he put that up and under directly towards him. And as a result, the try came of that. So it's not just him coming on and speeding up the ball. It's him as a leader coming on and introducing probably the original game plan that the players that are on the pitch probably slightly forgot about as well.
It seems quite incredible to me. Say you're splitting the game as you are there into 6 periods. Seems quite incredible that the 5th period of those 6 will be the one with the most work rate. I know you have got the impact, as you say, of subs like Gibson Park, but that's still quite extraordinary. Yeah,
it's a lot to do with the way in which the game is played. But like if I was working with this team, I'd be saying, is there any particular reason why we can't have that at the start of the game? If you're the fittest team, and this is won many games with different leagues and different levels, which is trying to introduce getting all the players to work as hard as it possibly can at the same time. And you'll probably find that you'll probably only get 3 or 4 guys doing it at the start, but we can measure that and actually identify the players that are doing that. And then the next week you'll get 6 or 7, and then the next 3rd week you'll have everybody, and everybody will buy in, and teams will be blown out of the water. So that's
just to go back to that. The last 6 minutes time section, no one's doing any work. Basically.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of reset scrums and that. There was a lot of time kind of wasted as well. There was, it was a lot of waiting around. There's a lot of box kicking. There was a lot of.
Is that because the game's over in a way and that everybody's managing it?
Yeah, and also because Ireland are probably defending a little bit more as well. So. When we look, so that original idea of it's harder to defend, or it's harder to defend than it is to attack. That age-old perspective on the game is total rubbish. It doesn't make any sense, because if you're in attack and you just want to recycle the ball, you usually have a pass, you have a carry to contact, ball placement. Then you have maybe 3 ruckers, so 1, 2, 3. So in before that ball gets recycled, you can have up to 7 individual activities involved in that gameplay. But in defence, you can have a tackle assist, and maybe a counter ruck. So to organise 3 people, it's a lot easier to organise than it is to organise 7. And that's why the fittest teams are at the top. That's why the teams that are able to hold onto the ball, and it's probably the main reason, and the laws that have been introduced have enhanced Ireland's chances as well. But all of these things together have the opposite impact on what's happening to the likes of England, who like kicking the ball away, and they don't have that sense of game plan where they build and put pressure on teams.
Does it give us an indication as to, and I'm sure the Irish management have this idea as well, but when Gibson Park comes on in the 53rd minute, is there a prime moment where they're like, well, we could bring him on at half time, we could bring him on at 65 minutes? There's obviously a peak moment where work rate drops off or other things drop off.
Well, I thought it said it all with after the match when the coaching staff were, they were absolutely elated. I think in reality, it wasn't just the fact that the team had played well. I think the coaching staff had amazing masterclass as well.
Right decisions at the right time.
Yeah, because I watch a lot of rugby, so I could see it. I could see that the team had come a little bit flat. And there's certain instances when you want your team to kind of flick the switch, and that's when you introduce different players. So I think Farrell, when he was after the match, giving his press conference, and he was so happy, I don't think he was just so happy that the players had implemented the game plan as the way they did, but I also think it was the fact that their coaching staff did such a great job and didn't make any mistakes and made the changes when they were supposed to. And was it France last year, or I can't remember, was it this year or last year, where they got an injury and then they took off. Oh no, it was New Zealand in the summer, wasn't it? When they took off Ari Sevilla. And they had to get in. They lost Servia for the rest of the game because they made the wrong changes.
Yeah.
So these sort of things, they're highly pressured, highly, major situations where you got to think and make these decisions very, very quickly. And the last slide that we show is then not just the work rate, but the quality of the work rate. So the grades, the accuracy of the passes, the accuracy of the breakdowns. When we look at the next slide, then the last slide, we can then do a comparison between Ireland and Scotland. So Ireland obviously green line, Scotland the blue line. And in the fifth section, then, you know, the lines are crossing quite a bit in between sections 1 and 4, which indicates your
Close match.
Yeah. It's 8-7. You know, it's perfectly poised. But then we bring in the player and a leader who's able to, you know, give small details to the pack, give small details to the backs. And then and the fitness then kicks in, and then Scotland's fitness drops off, and Ireland's game plan becomes more and more apparent. And then, you know, Scotland crack, and Ireland come away with a famous victory.
Yeah, it did look like cracking as well. It was the pressure built and built and built. So it sounds like you're pretty confident about Ireland at the weekend.
I am, but do you know what, Ger? Do you know what I was thinking there last night was this Grand Slam in 09. Was it 09? We had I pulled them up here. What was the name of the player who, Paddy Wallace, in the 80th minute, counter-rucked in the side and gave away the penalty, and the drama that ensued on that. And then there's the Le Drop, in 2018, which I think was the first game of the competition where
it was early on. Like
we were playing really, really poorly.
We handled our business against England at Twickenham on the last day, though.
Yeah. No. But my question is are we in for another one of those types of?
No, don't say it. No, I don't think my heart can take that. I don't think
it's
any of our
nervous
hearts
screwing up when at the end of the first half. O'Gara mentioned it earlier on. I think that was the moment.
You think?
Okay. Unless there's a sending off. You know, unless there's a front row sending off and we have to go through that situation where we're down to 13 men. Even then,
we haven't got a card yet.
Even then, I know that's why it would be a black swan event.
Yeah,
that would prevent us from winning this game this weekend. But Manu Tuilagi, the ghost of Tuilagi, haunts Irish rugby. So,
but I also think though that England are going to be wounded, and a wounded England is, and if, you know, those players are going to be a little bit worn up, pissed off, really.
we shall see.
So, yeah, it's going to be a good game.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
All right, good stuff. That's Derek McNamara of reactrugby.com with his analysis of the game last weekend, and obviously we'll talk to him again next week in the aftermath of a Grand Slam, we hope. Right. Cheltenham starts today. It is time for us to head over there and talk to John Duggan for the first time this morning.
And they're all.
Mark your card on Off the Ball.
With Boyle Sports. Make this Cheltenham epic. 18 plus. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie.
John Duggan, good morning to you. How are you?
Great, Ger and Shane, yourselves.
It's a woolly hat for you this morning. A bit miserable, is it?
I'm upgrading my life later on this afternoon. The Peaky Blinders hat will be purchased and we'll have it for you tomorrow morning on the head. And then I'm sure my personality will change and everything.
Well, it might be too cold for the Peaky Blinders hat, is it?
No.
Well, you know, I'm a hardy soul, and early mornings are no issue for me. But look, it's actually not that bad this morning. It was pretty grim yesterday, a lot of rain and a lot of wind, but it's calmed down now. There was a bit of drizzle when I watched the race course earlier on, but it's going to be a dry day and soft ground, but the ground dries out quickly here. So look, you do want soft ground horses on your side, but we'll just have to see if there's more rain this week. But look, what they always say about a good horse will go on any ground. So if your horse is good enough, it should win today. Okay,
two big storylines today, Honeysuckle and Constitution Hill. Let's talk about Honeysuckle first. I think people don't expect Honeysuckle to win today.
Well, the market now is saying that she might.
Right.
So she's been backed heavily this morning into 5-2 favourites, whether that's emotional money given it's her last race with Rachel Blackmore, the people's favourite in the saddle, and Henry de Bromhead training, and that she's a mare, or maybe it's just the fact that maybe her runs this season when she's lost for the first time haven't been as bad as we thought. Like, it was a seasonal reappearance in the Ferry House Hatton's Grace Hurdle when she was third on bad ground, and then she was second behind State Man, who's an improving horse in the Irish Champion Hurdle. So maybe those runs aren't as bad as we thought. Like, she did win this race 3 years ago, and then she regressed up the ranks to win 2 Champion Hurdles. So she's won 3 times at the festival. We know she loves the hill. And maybe people are just kind of going back to her now and thinking that she's the class horse in the race. The one she's got to beat, I feel, Ger, is Marie's Rock, who won this race last year. Nicky Henderson trains. This horse then beat the males in the Relkill Hurdle at Cheltenham last time. Loves the hill, loves the gallop up that hill. And she won a Punchestown last year, beat Evitant. And I think it's between the two of them, to be honest. But then again, it's a very deep race. You've got Brandy Love, Echoes in Rain, Epitant, as I said, Honeysuckle, Love Envoi, Queen's Brook. She wears it well. It's a competitive race. But look, Honeysuckle, if she returns to any kind of semblance of her best, she's got a big chance here.
Frequently, the glory of Cheltenham is frequently the much hyped anticipation of one horse versus another actually comes to pass, and they are going neck and neck up the hill. But almost as frequently, a randomer comes from the pack, smashes everybody, and they go, "Oh, yeah." I mean, now looking back, the form suggested that was always going to be the case, and this horse is actually an all-timer too.
You can always make an argument, can't you, for anything? So Plutar last year won the champion race for steeplechasers, the Gold Cup, by 15 lengths. Rachel Blackmore rode it differently this time, and it was a bit more patient ride, and that's the reason all happened. And the champion chased an Ergeman well, and Ergeman, they used different tactics at Ascot against Shishkin, and they held him back this time, and Shishkin didn't run any race, and then Ergeman then was able to come clear. So look, it's very rare that you find, unlike 1990 when Norton's Coin won the Gold Cup at 100-1, where you think to yourself, wow, I really have no idea how that happens. Generally, sometimes there's always somebody out there who's got a fiver on something and has said, yeah, well, there was something I saw, or somebody had a word with me, or I saw something about 10 runs ago that gave me an opinion that this might happen today. And that's why I always try to look for outsiders if I can at Cheltenham, because all it takes is one or two outsiders to make your week.
Is there a reason, John, we were only talking about Honeysuckle and Epatante and that Mare's Hurdle? You mentioned Maurice Rock, but the 48-hour declarations, Maurice Rock was I guess expected to go in the Stayers Hurdle, but Nicky Henderson has opted for this one instead. Is that maybe why Maurice Rock kind of went under the radar?
Yes, possibly. But yesterday she was all the rage in the market, so there was a huge amount of money for her yesterday when they saw that change. And it's all about the ground. They feel that on this ground, softer ground, that let's not try and test her stamina. Let's go for what we know. A winner is a winner. And she sets the standard. I think she's got improvement in her. She's got a gutsy attitude. I think attitude is a huge thing with horses. And sometimes if you watch races, you really see a horse respond to urgings, to pressure, and to really show a good attitude. And I think that's something visually you can actually see. Whereas other horses, they might wander around, they might hit a fence, they might down tools. Other horses might sometimes spit the dummy out, as it were. But Maurice Rock is not one of those. And I think she's got definitely a huge chance of winning that Mare's Hurdle today at 4:10.
In the papers today, Patrick Mullins is talking about the roar at 1:30 when the Supreme Novices starts at Cheltenham, and how it's one of those things that everybody should experience once in their life. If you haven't experienced it, why not? Was basically his point. Pre-show, Shane was talking about the great sports roars. You've experienced many of them, John.
Lucky enough, yeah.
What's this one like?
It puts a kind of a shiver down your spine and a nerve, kind of a butterflies in your stomach, I feel. That's the way I would describe it. It's kind of a nervousness that you wouldn't normally get. It almost is like a lightning bolt. Not that I've had one, but you just really feel a shiver and a sense of something really, really big, a sense of something really, really grand. And then again, when you see a horse at the top of the hill, and like they've got big screens here, I'm just near the winning post here, and you see big screens, and it's obviously hard to see some of the action down the back of the race course, but then you see them come at the top of the hill, and then the roar that goes up, say in a Gold Cup or a Champion Chase or Champion Hurdle, when a contender especially is, or there's like two of them fighting it out at the top of the hill, and then they come down the hill. It's a strange thing here that you've actually got two courses side by side, an old course, which is the one on the inside, and then the new course, which is beside it. So the old course is used on Tuesday and Wednesday, the new course on Thursday and Friday, and the new course has got a longer finish. So in the Gold Cup on Friday, for example, you might jump in the lead at the last, but there's a long finishing run, and the hill doesn't look as imposing on the TV as it is here in person. It's a steep, like even to walk it, it's pretty steep. So there's one horse that'll always relish it, but other horses don't sometimes, and they can get chinned and collared. But yeah, in terms of the feeling, like really, Ger and Shane, there's no space here. Like I'm lucky enough to be sometimes in the press area. Like beside me, there is literally everybody is squeezed in really, really tight, and it is just this electricity through the veins of the feeling that whoa, it's like a national anthem. After a national anthem is played for the All-Ireland final, or those few moments before a final whistle goes at an All-Ireland final, or when the Republic of Ireland score, these are all kind of different ways we emote. And the way at 1:30 today, people will be emoting will be just a huge amount of, they'll be almost expelling the last 6 months of anti-post bets and hope, and now feeling the degree of nerves that this is what it's all about.
People want to get off to a fairly decent start, John, in that Supreme Novices Hurdle. Facile Vega won the champion bumper last year, going in this, favourite I think, last time I checked this morning. Do you expect it to be challenged? Because it's quite an open race. It's not an easy one to call.
Well, if Facile Vega ran to the level he did last year, Shane, he wins. But in that bumper last year, and he's the 2-1 favourite as I look at the screen here, he had a hard race on really bad ground. It was it was one of the worst weather conditions I experienced here last year on the Wednesday. So I wonder if that race left a mark on Facile Vega. And to me, he has not been impressive. Not only did he go out like a light at Leopardstown last time, his jumping doesn't really encourage me as a jumper. So when you're looking at the likes of High Definition, Ilete Thomas, who beat him the last day, the horse Marine National, who's never been beaten, for Barry Connell, who can't see him being beaten, Tamuris for Paul Nichols. I think this is an open race. It's not a race to get involved in if you're going to have a euro each way. So Facile Vega, if he bounces back and his confidence within William Mullins' yard, and the fact that Paul Tennant rides is something in his favour, but I don't think he's a natural hurdle horse, and I couldn't back him a confidence at 2-1. Might have egged my face by saying that, but it's a race just to watch and to enjoy, and not to get involved, in my view.
Yeah, even shorter at some places as the morning has gone on here as well. Constitution Hill, let's talk to us a little bit about, is Constitution Hill one of those horses that we should just all enjoy and watch and stay away from?
Yes, if he goes into the sky and starts flying off like a plane, I wouldn't be surprised, metaphorically, because he's never lost a race he's never won a race by less than 12 lengths. So Barry Geraghty, it's an interesting story about Barry Geraghty. He bought this horse as a 6-month-old foal, spotted something in him, and then sold him, and he got a close relationship with the Nicky Henderson yard. Michael Buckley bought him. So Barry Geraghty's got a huge association with the horse. And what Barry Geraghty said about this horse, that most horses maybe might quicken once, but this horse keeps on quickening. And if you look at the replay of the match with John Bond last year in the Supreme Novices Hurdle, around the bend, he just went whoosh, and it was it. The race was over. So he's won all of his races without even being tested. The interesting thing is that State Man, the David to the Goliath, has done nothing wrong all the season, been very professional, lowered Honeysuckle's colours to the extent where Honeysuckle's now running in the Mares race today. Has won at the festival, but did win in a handicap race, so he'll need to improve. But I'd love to see State Man put Constitution Hill under pressure. How will Paul Townend tactically ride in the race? Will he go out in front and maybe become a sitting duck, or will he try and just stick with Constitution Hill? So it's an absolutely fascinating race. It's one to enjoy, as you say. I don't think anything else in the race is even going to get close to them. But there's a really interesting quirk about this, and if you're a stats person, the last horse to win the Supreme Novices Hurdle and the following year by the Champion Hurdle was in 1971.
All right.
Which was Beulah. So 52 years of stats that Constitution Hill is trying to beat today, but he's odds on to do so, and I hope he wins.
3-1 on as short as very, very short price, so don't be getting involved in that.
Yeah.
What are you looking at today, Shane?
Yeah, I just feel sorry for Paul Townend and State Man, because probably the most unlucky horse to come along at the same time as a horse like Constitution Hill. That was one I was looking at, John, that race, but it's probably, as you say, one to avoid. You mentioned yesterday like the horses that go well on soft being the ones to watch today. Are there any particular standouts, any long shots, anything we can keep an eye on?
Well, I'm going to go through it here. So,
are these your charity bets? Is it time for us to ask?
Yeah. I think that's probably the best way of getting into it. So, with our sponsor, Boyle Sports, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be hopefully singing, lads, at 5:30 with Manella Crooner as my nap each way at 7-1, 40 each way on him. I've got 200 to spend. Barry O'Neill, the Wexford jockey, the best point-to-point jockey in Ireland, with Jamie Codd, rides this, and he's never had a Cheltenham winner, and he's been very unlucky a few times. He's got off another horse to ride this. Manella Crooner was a very good novice hurdle horse last season and didn't run at the festival, but has been running well in races under a shorter distance. This is a 3 mile, 6 furlong race. He's got to beat Gyre de Menil, the Willie Mullins trained even money favourite. But I think Manella Crooner can give you a run each way if your money at 7-1 under Barry O'Neill. He's a good jumper. I think he'll stay. I think Gord Elliott is sweet on him. And I think that Manella Crooner is definitely one to watch in the 5:30. In the Arkle Chase, Saint Roi for Willie Mullins, with Mark Walsh riding for the colours of J.B. McManus, is about 15-2. I put 20 each way of the charity money on him. This is a really interesting horse because he was 4th in the Champion Hurdle. He's won at the festival before. He's a hold-up horse, and I think the Arkle Chase will be an absolute cavalry charge. The Dysart Dynamo is going to go off like the clappers. You'll have El Fabiolo and John Bon in there as well. And maybe if he's jumping is good enough, he might be able to pick them off and get into other places, or maybe even better than that. Monbeg Genius in the 250. I've gone for a huge amount of money for him. John Joe Neal Senior trains and John Joe Neal Junior rides. I put 15 each way on him at 13-2. He's won his last few races. I think he's a progressive horse. He's got a decent enough weight in the soft ground off 10 stone 13. Marie's Rock, I think, will win. And Jazzy Matty was one I just felt might have a little bit of an each way squeak at 16-1 in the Boodles handicap hurdle at 450. 10 each way on him. Gordon Elliott trains. He's won the race 3 times. He's got Michael O'Sullivan taking £3 off. The horse is a half brother to Delta Work. And I feel that he might be, of all the outsiders, I picked the one to put in there. But Manila Crooner, folks, I'll be singing. Don't know what I'm going to sing, but I'll be singing if that one wins. In terms of the soft ground horses, Love Envoi, love soft ground. In the pocket in the first race, like soft ground. But as I said at the very start of the conversation, if your horse is good enough, you should win on any types of ground, as fast as Vega did last year.
All right, John, opening day at Cheltenham, the butterflies in the stomach, the electricity in the air. This is your season, buddy. Enjoy.
Thanks, Ger. Thanks, Shane.
Enjoy,
we'll talk
John.
to you tomorrow.
And they're all.
Mark your card on Off the Ball.
With Boyle Sports. Make this Cheltenham epic. 18 plus. Gamble responsibly. See gamblingcare.ie.
Yeah, you can get the Mark Your Card podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
You've been to Cheltenham, have you?
No.
No, it's on the bucket list for myself as well. It's definitely one of those you have to take it off, especially day one. Like you want to be there for that roar. I want to experience that in person. Get those chills that John talks about.
And would you rather be there for the opening day, or would you rather be there for the Gold Cup at the end?
That's a fair point. Well, I suppose if you're going, you're probably going for the 4 days, aren't you? Most people, I'd imagine, would go over for the duration. So, yeah, and I'd say it's not easy to get the accommodation and the flights sorted. I'm sure it's quite expensive at this time of year, but
I think you can make it in a day if you plan it properly.
Right, just get it done, see it, experience it, soak it up. Yeah, hopefully the weather isn't too bad for people over there, but I'm sure they won't care regardless.
No, it doesn't look like the weather's going to be great. A reminder, OTB AM live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Here's what's coming up on the OTB podcast network. You can get Mark Your Card, as I said. The latest Koi Gig pod is available for download now. And the Hurling pod, a brand new episode. We're going to talk to Will in just a minute. Make sure you follow us across all our social channels. Subscribe to the OTB podcast network on the OTB Sports app. After this short break, the Hurling Pod's Will O'Callaghan's updated power rankings. First, a bit of Gordon Darcy goodness, speaking with Joe Malloy last night about the Scotland win.
And I think a player, if you mentioned, you've name checked him already, a guy who was really, really good in this match was Peter O'Mahony. And I actually spent the first 20 minutes watching Peter O'Mahony, and I was kind of looking at him going, because he and probably I'd be guilty of it as well, you don't give him necessarily the praise that he gets, because you kind of go, well, what does he do? Because you really have to look for what he does. Everything, even from a line-out lift, that he gets the extra inch for James Ryan to win a ball, to just being a pain in the arse at rucks, to being that glue between two defenders that doesn't necessarily make a tackle, but he defends space. He was phenomenal. In that game, and in that passage when Scotland were in there, he was everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think Ireland just they frustrated Scotland in that period, and then that's what I mean by, say, Scotland bashing themselves against Ireland, like almost that tie against the rocks kind of thing. And Ireland only creaked once, and then when Ireland went again, Scotland didn't have an answer.
And after that Hugh Jones try, as I mentioned, Rudge, they come again, they're on top. It's O'Mahony does get that boot to a ball. One of those small things that in real time you don't think to yourself, that's hugely significant. But when you're watching the game back this afternoon and you know the flow of the game, you're like, well, that intervention turned the tide, chased after it, Ireland get on the ball, Hansen scores that try 3 minutes later, and suddenly it's 8-7 after Scottish dominance.
You're listening
to OTB AM. The Koi Gig Pod.
I wouldn't even look at them. I wouldn't even prepare to play against them, because you don't know what you're going to get. We could beat them 6-0. or we could lose 6-0.
Pre-season, I haven't been broken by it yet, so ask away. Shamrock Rovers, even though they're a new club, based on pre-season, you'd be looking at them.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now.
The Heineken Champions Cup is back. Leinster take on Ulster in the round of 16, Saturday, April 1st at 5:30 in the Aviva Stadium. Join the Sea of Blue for this massive inter-provincial clash. Tickets on sale now at leinsterrugby.ie. Terms and conditions apply.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Some of these critics, these pundits.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
I'd like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just miss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
Larry Burr, good morning to you.
Morning lads, how are you getting on?
How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm just after seeing a piece of breaking news come out from Maurice Brosnan in the Irish Examiner, and probably more bad news for the Ladies Football Championship this summer, and talk about the AFLW. So there's 6 days that clubs have got time to sign international players before the window closes, and Niamh McLaughlin, the current player of the year, the Donegal star, it looks like she's about to sign for the Gold Coast Suns, so she's heading to Queensland. Would have previously played in the Women's Super League with Newcastle and Sunderland, so no great surprise that she's looking at playing in a multi-code of sports. But
pretty talented.
These annoying people who's good at everything.
Yeah. But a huge blow for Donegal going into the summer, and also to lose the current player of the year. So you have Vicky Wall, who's already in North Melbourne, who was the player of the year before, but it's understood that she will be back to play for Meath later on in the summer. And the other one that's being reported currently by Morris is the possibility of Laois's best player from the All-Ireland Intermediate Championship last year, Aaron Fitzpatrick, who's being scouted by quite a few clubs, it seems. But Morris is reporting that Carlton want to get her signing done before the end of the trade block on March the 20th. So 6 days left for Aaron Fitzpatrick to make a decision. But she was nominated for Player of the Year in the All-Ireland Intermediate Championship last year. So it looks like 2 of the stars of last summer are on their way to Australia for the coming season.
It's not great, is it? I mean, if the Ballon d'Or winner 2 years in a row went off and started playing cricket or something, you'd be like, what's going on here?
I disagree. I think it's amazing for them. It's
a great opportunity for them.
Yeah,
personally.
And I actually think it's great for sport generally to have this. Like, they're all going to come back at some point, and they're going to come back with like a completely different sense of culture and professionalism, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that we get very precious about these GAA players, imagine them going off to Australia and having a good time, seeing the world. Who the hell do they think they are? This is terrible for us. I'm like, no,
it's bad for the game selfishly.
Well,
like
whatever,
for
but
the
sure,
year,
the game will improve. Like, the game isn't that fragile that it can't take a few people going off and having a bit of crack, is it?
No, and like I think
did Gaelic football survive a couple of years of Jack McCaffrey like being a doctor?
Yeah,
didn't it? It did. So what's the
imagine he
difference?
was there though.
What's the difference?
Well, Jack McCaffrey not being there is the difference.
But like, and so I don't know. I think we get very precious about this. Same way we get precious about anybody calling us a bunch of drunks, and then Matt Hansen saying we are a bunch of drunks.
Paddy Wackery, yeah.
Do you know? That's my instinct on this: is go off and have the crack and come back and tell us all about it, and we'll all pay a bit more attention now to this than we would have in the first place. That's my
instinct, by the way, about the Saturday Night Live sketch was not to get offended by it, but it was just shit.
Yeah, it was a bad sketch.
I think everybody can agree with that. Right, your power rankings have so far proven to be uncontroversial. Is that fair? Largely,
well, one round in, it's very difficult to be controversial. Like, unless you decide to do something totally crazy and go, you know what? Actually, I haven't been that impressed by Limerick so far. Let's put them down in 17th. So unless you're, going for a hot take on this, I think you'll be okay in round 1. Round 2 is when people start going, we have 4 rounds now at this stage, and even if teams are doing heavy blocks of training, and even if teams are maybe putting out, second string sides and trying players out currently, we've got enough evidence maybe to now kind of look towards the championship and say, all right, I think we've a fair idea of where they settle. But as you see, when we get into, I think particularly from teams 7 to about 3, it looks at this stage, even very early on, almost impossible to call who is coming out of the Munster Championship alongside Limerick at this stage.
Yeah, it is. And that's why it's going to be really great. I think the injuries that Waterford have been having, look, maybe all those players will miraculously heal in the meantime. This isn't the NFL where there are repercussions if your injuries heal or take longer. than is officially communicated. So let's get into this, right? We're starting.
Yeah.
Derry at 18, Down at 17, Carlow at 16, Kerry at 15, Kildare at 14 finally, and Offaly at 13. But we're coming for Offaly. That's the...
Yeah, well, look, Kildare could reverse that for the next set of the power rankings, because Kildare are already guaranteed at this stage, Ger, of at least a home semi-final. They're top of the table currently. So if they were to beat Offaly away from home this Sunday, that would mean that Kildare will go directly to the final in Division 2A. If they lose, they know they'll play a Kerry team who they've already beaten at home in the semi-final, most likely. So there's not a huge amount on the line on Sunday, except for the fact that whoever wins that game between Offaly and Kildare will be guaranteed an extra week's rest before the Division 2A final. And unlike Division 1, where teams have been mixing and matching their sides a little bit, you've no option in 2A but to go for every single game, because promotion's on the line and only one team is going to be promoted at the end of this. So Kildare, very impressive, huge win for them against Kerry at the weekend, unbeaten so far, top of the table currently on scoring difference. And if it's not this season, I get the feeling that that Kildare will go up over the next couple of years anyway. And
it's now, Will. Our time is now.
Well, to go from the Christy Ring Championship to go into Division 1, the Hurling League, would be remarkable with the upward trend that Kildare are on currently. And this is a huge opportunity for them. I think for hurling, as much as I want to see selfishly from a biased point of view Offaly get promoted this season, it'd be big for hurling to have another team at the top table in Division 1 if Kildare were to get promoted over the next little while. Kerry obviously would be disappointed. They're the fallers at the moment, down to 15. They've suffered back-to-back defeats against their promotion rivals in Offaly and Kildare either side of the break. But Kerry still have the opportunity, if they win on Sunday, where they could finish up in third place. It just looks like it's going to be a longer route for the Kingdom to get into the Division 2A final, but they won't miss out 2 years in a row in promotion. It would be very disappointing for them if they don't get to at least the final in Division 2A.
There's not much between these teams at that level, but the job that David Hardy is doing is astonishing, and it would be really important for Kildare to keep him for the medium term. But I can imagine that other bigger counties, more established counties at the top tier, are going, that's really good, isn't he?
Yeah, it helps that he talks a good game as well. Like, anytime that we have him on the show, I think Harity always has insights that you probably don't think about, and the way he probably thinks about it from a different perspective to many of the pundits who are out there right now, because he's really good at kind of seeing things as a goalkeeper. Maybe throughout his career they've got a very wide view of what's happening on the pitch, and I always think Harity is a good listen, which helps as well, on top of what's been backed up on the pitch with what Kildare have been doing. I mean, it's been very well documented, Naas winning the All-Ireland Intermediate Club the year before last, and getting a win in the Senior Championship against Shinrone in the season just gone by. Those players are backboning the Kildare team right now. Some very good young players and good young dual players who are coming through in Kildare in the school system currently. So there is that feeling that there's a conveyor belt of talent, and that this isn't just one group of Kildare hurlers right now who maybe are on the precipice of doing something remarkable. I think there's the feeling that Kildare are a coming force in hurling right now, and it's helped. I mean, it's been well documented, the fact that their clubs have gone and played in the Kilkenny league system at underage level, and that's helped to sharpen things a little bit as well. And maybe we'll be talking about Kildare as a model for some other counties who are trying to develop, because they are bringing themselves up the hurling totem pole right now.
Kildare are a dual county now, is that what we're saying?
Well,
are we going with that?
What you're saying? Could you imagine a situation, Shane, if the Kildare footballers were to end up in Division 3, albeit I think they are still going to stay up in Division 2, and their hurlers were to be in Division 1? At that point, do we start talking about Kildare being a hurling county by the time that Connaught Park is ready to reopen again?
Yeah, you'd be... The difficulty with that is that there'd be a backlash. The burn the sticks thing would travel from Meath down to Kildare, and another civil war would happen in Kildare GAA. So I think it's, I do honestly think that the job that Harity's done is sensational. It crept up imperceptibly that it had been 5 years that he's been plugging away there, and so fair play to him. But it was interesting that they were name checked by Don Logue in the middle of his bit at the weekend about the new president, and should there be an injection of cash to some of these counties specifically aimed at nourishing hurling? I think there should be in Antrim. I mean, they should be able to get their own house in order, because it's such a big county and there's massive population and there's loads of money floating around. And it's the same in Kildare, but actually if you need to license 10 or 15 coaches to go in for a generation and go, we want you to be first tier because bigger audiences, more people, more counties, spread the love. I don't know. And then you have, what about me? What about mine? I've been there for years. I'm the prodigal son. You're killing the... So, you open a can of worms. Let's move on before I get any more into that. The next one. Laois 12, Westmeath 11, Antrim 10. Wexford are on 9. Dublin up 1 on 8. Waterford down 1 on 7.
Yeah, so Laois dropped to 12th on the back of losing the most important game of their season on the Sunday just gone by, where they played against Antrim in what was effectively a relegation playoff semi-final. Conal Cunning scored 110 for Antrim. They moved the ball around really well. They're guaranteed of Division 1 status now for the 2024 season after beating Laois by a couple of goals, 318 to 118. I've put Westmeath in 11th because Westmeath, to their credit, have had a lot of injuries this year. Didn't have their captain Killian Doyle, who was their main player against Limerick at the weekend. They beat Cork in the second half of their game just before the break, and they drew the second half against Limerick on the weekend just gone by. No Niall Mitchell currently either, so they've got injuries a bit like Waterford that they need to try and get healed up ahead of the Championship, where they're going to have a lot of tough games. But Westmeath have acquitted themselves reasonably well in a very, very difficult Division 1A, and I kind of fancy Westmeath to win the playoff against Laois in 2 weeks' time. Antrim go up a place to 10th on the back of beating Laois and being safe, and now knowing they can go into the Leinster Championship, knowing they'll be playing top flight hurling. Wexford, I was listening to Sarah Donovan chatting to you guys yesterday, and like Lee Chin made such a difference to that Wexford team at the weekend against Cork, albeit Cork did switch their side around a little bit, and Cork trailed in that game for 69 minutes to Wexford. Wexford be so disappointed that they didn't get 2 points on the board at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And then you look at the injuries they've picked up. It's been a costly defeat as well, where Conor McDonald, Damien Reck, Liam McGovern, Matthew O'Hanlon went off. O'Hanlon had deputised really well in at the full back position, with Liam Ryan currently out with a hand injury as well. And then you saw Dee O'Keefe was just limping around for the last 10 minutes or so, trying to just be a player that could stand in at full forward. That's a lot of key players, and they haven't had Rory O'Connor during the season either. It was a good response given that they conceded 625 against Clare in the previous game in the home ground at Wexford Park to go to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and to perform as well as they did. But I wonder if some of these injuries are now aggravations, how much that might affect them in the Leinster Championship.
That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, currently you're kind of thinking Dublin might just finish ahead of them in Leinster.
Well, Sarah made me doubt myself about that maybe Micheál O'Donnell's plan isn't a 1 year thing. It's not an immediate bounce. It's put structures in place, build slowly, as opposed to try and have some kind of great escape. And actually, if those players, again, we'll have to wait and see what the team sheet is like, and then we'll have to see if they make it through the first 30 minutes and they're not just taking a risk on them. So, okay, that's that page. Anything else on that page you want to talk to us about?
I think Dublin, again, it's just their dependency on Donald Burke. Like, he has been the man to watch because of the spectacular points he's been putting over in the league so far. Again, he scored 11 points against Kilkenny.
Were you not worried?
Dublin were really limp.
Yeah, were you not worried about the fact that Kilkenny just essentially handled them like they traditionally do?
They always
Thanks very much for the game, but actually this is not important to us.
Yeah, last 3 games they played against Kilkenny bullied them off the pitch. And at the weekend, one thing to know for Kilkenny, didn't hit a single wide in the first half, which is very impressive. It's a very different efficiency to what we've seen from Dublin, who seem to shoot from everywhere during the National Hurling League so far. I think their forward line is a little bit short right now. That's the problem further down the line for Dublin. Skell on the pod last night was quick to point out that Micheál O'Donnell's first year with Galway, he ran the S out of them in pre-season, and they were doing a lot of heavy training during the league, which he felt actually was a big part of their lack of performances in the league that year. But in Championship they managed to get their performances right. So maybe Dublin are in a very heavy block of training at the moment.
Well, more importantly, did Skell's Ma's insistence that he not curse mean that he said they ran the S out of us, or did he actually?
No, well, like, considering on the bonus episode last week, Skell said horseshit 4 different times when he was responding to a listener comment, meant that he did not learn his lesson. I think during the first half of the pod he was reasonably well behaved, and then next thing, I think I may well have enabled him, because there were a few comments that came in going, just let Skell swear, it's a podcast, let him loose. And next thing, horseshit came out multiple times when someone suggested that the Munster final was important to Limerick last year. And then I think Skell backed down and apologised to the same listener this week. So
amazing.
He's learning.
The way the league champions last year, Waterford, down in was it 7th? You had them. Well, like,
yeah,
they had
7th place,
shipping goals for fun, and Austin Gleeson injured now as well, so which isn't great for them.
Yeah, I mean, a few concerns. The game at the weekend, Tipperary against Waterford at Thurles, was the best game we've seen in the league so far. There was a real kind of needle and intensity about that game, and it only really ran away from Waterford after Jamie Byrne was sent off. Now, that's an issue in itself. Waterford are picking up red cards throughout the league. It's been hurting their performances and making games more difficult for them. And then they conceded 3-8 to 6 points in the last 15 minutes of the game, and that's a concern for Waterford. But the game was a bit closer maybe than the final scoreline would suggest. Problems would be, I don't know about Desi Hutchinson in this withdrawn role. For me, Desi Hutchinson, play him a corner forward, let him be a player going off the shoulder of the last defender, let his runs drag around a full back line. I don't know if he's as effective coming out the field. And then Stephen Bennett, who this time last year was in everybody's fancy hurling team because of the scoring that he was doing on Waterford's run to winning the league, he hasn't scored from play so far in the league. And that's a big concern. His free taking is still quite good. And then Ozzie Gleeson comes in to start at the weekend, and then he picks up a hamstring injury, which has put him out for 4 weeks. Ger's already mentioned their lengthy injury list. To have Conor Prunty and Austin Gleeson out for probably the start of the Munster Championship is far from ideal. So you just kind of wonder, there's a combination of things there, both the injuries and also the system has meant it hasn't quite clicked just yet.
Hamstring injuries obviously also notoriously difficult to come back from in the same way in the middle of the championship. Let's move on to page 1. So Clare 6, Tip 5, Galway 4, Cork 3, Kilkenny 2, Limerick 1. This is all wrong, Will, by the way, but Clare are down 2 to 6, even though they've got their players back. Tip up 2 to 5, Galway down 1, Cork up 2 to 3, Kilkenny unchanged as your second best team, which is clearly wrong, and Limerick number 1.
Yeah. So Clare, obviously the disappointment is that they let that 7-point lead slip against Galway at the weekend. Very, very rare occasion where you've got Tony Kelly not scoring at all at the weekend. Given Tony played like a remarkable pass to Meehan for the assist, which was probably one of the moments of the weekend. But for Tony Kelly not to score is completely remarkable, really. And Galway took control of that game in the second half against Clare. It's very hard to know. Clare have been up and down in the league so far. If you were to look at the two most significant games that they played, away to Limerick, with the exception of the bit of a second half comeback, they were convincingly beaten. They lost the second half quite comprehensively against Galway at home at the weekend. And I think you're probably judging it slightly on that. I still like this Clare team, and as Ger has mentioned, a lot of their main players are coming back in, and they played some lovely hurling in the first 15 minutes when Galway allowed them to do so. John Conlon just walking out with the ball at different stages in Ennis at the weekend. But I just kind of wonder at this stage whether Clare are quite clicking just yet. Again, you got to bear in mind they play Cork this weekend. They probably would reckon that Limerick are going to qualify, so Clare will go off and do a mini training block probably after their last round of the league this weekend, and maybe they come flying into Munster like they did last season, where they were so impressive and pushed Limerick to the pin of their collar. But at the moment they look like they're just a little bit back in that level last year. Tipperary, I think you got to respect what they've been doing so far. They're averaging 33 points a game. That forward line just has so many options. Not respecting them enough to put them up to like second or third here. How are they behind Cork? Well, Cork have won 4 games from 4. I mean, albeit the last 2 games were against a Wexford team with quite a few injuries and Westmeath. I take that into account. But this is a Cork team who've won away from home, put 4 goals past Galway and Salt Hill, and came from behind to beat Limerick in the first game, and are doing so in Division 1A.
You're the captain of the Cork hype train here, Will.
I know.
You have Cork fans booking off the day after the All-Ireland final at this rate.
Not quite that, but I was slightly on the hype train last year after the Kilkenny game. I really thought after that semi-final in the league, it was like, you know what, Cork actually have all this hurling talent, but they've managed to just add that work rate to it as well, and a little bit of steel. And then I went down to Thurles to cover the league finals, and Waterford just ran through them for sport, and I got concerned at that point. And obviously that form carried somewhat into Munster, and they never quite got back to that level that they seemed to be at the semi-final of the league, and so they didn't push on to get to an All-Ireland final by the end of the year. But I think Cork at the moment, it's fair to put them in the top 3 based on what they've done.
Colm wants me to mention Liam Cahill's management style and the goal focus that they have, which obviously we saw last year from Waterford in the league, and it's definitely something. Like Tipperary have an explosive forward line. Now again, I don't know, has there been an update on Callan's injury and how long he's going to be gone for, but he looked fit and he looked sharp, and I'm sure his influence around the place in training is good for everybody else when they're trying to blend and meld that group that they have. So maybe his injury keeps them away from that. I actually think that it should be Limerick on top, obviously, and then I'd have Clare and Tip and Kilkenny on a second tier that it's difficult to separate, and then
get off the fence, you have to put them in the position.
Okay, well I would go Clare second on the basis that they got the closest to Limerick last year, and that there's no reason for me to think that there's anything going there. And I'd have Tip behind them, and I'd have Kilkenny behind them, and then I'd have Cork and Galway on a level underneath that. But they're Larry Burr's rankings, not mine.
No, and like on the Tip goal point, that is a very good one. I mean, obviously at the weekend we saw them score goals for sport, and similarly they were incredibly efficient in front of goal away from home against Kilkenny in 2 of the most important games, Kilkenny and Waterford, that they faced in 1B. Like Jake Morris has played 4 games so far, lads, this year. He scored 5-5 from play. So in there, they're calling him the new Lar at this point because he wears the same helmet, the same socks, and he's got a very similar shooting style and grip style on his hurl. I'm not sure he's quite at Lar levels yet, but Jake Morris is really coming to the fore early in the year.
Okay.
And even if Callan Callanan is missing, Jason Ford can carry that scoring thread in the same way that Callanan has.
And seems ready for it as well.
They've melded some of those young players into that forward line as well.
We're not even talking about Limerick because there's no need. They're going to win the All-Ireland final by 10 points.
Just Dermot Burns and Aaron Gallan coming back at the weekend against Westmeath. To be able to bring them in when you see that Hegarty's not going to play but Dermot Burns is in to start, Gallan got to come on for a few minutes. They've slowly but surely just kind of worked these players back in, with some of them coming in late, and we haven't even seen Declan Hannon so far, their captain. So they look really well set up.
In the immortal words of Gaza, it wasn't bad, was it? Come here. We on a completely different note, it looks like the Offaly-Tipperary game is going to go ahead this weekend in the league, and for the competition's integrity, it's really important for Tipperary to have the opportunity to win those points. From Offaly's perspective, they're not in a relegation battle really, and they're not going to get promoted really. So, very difficult circumstances in the wake of Liam Kearns passing. It is a difficult situation, but it feels like that's the only thing they could have done.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's incredibly raw currently for the Offaly players because, as many people have probably been reading or hearing about over the last 24 hours, that Liam Kearns spent a couple of hours with the Offaly football panel on Sunday morning. And I was talking to some of the players on Sunday night. It was actually a player who had texted me first who had heard about it, and I was just completely shocked by the news on Sunday evening as it was starting to emerge. And the feeling was that they wanted to go forward this weekend and to play the game against Tipperary. Offaly's Division 3 status is already consolidated, but there is still that outside opportunity of going for promotion. And because of the way the table is looking in Division 3 right now, with Fermanagh, Down and Westmeath also in contention to join Cavan in a league final, it's important that this game is played this weekend, because there's not really a window to play it ahead of the last weekend if it was to be pushed back by a few days. So my understanding is right now that Martin Murphy and John Rouse will take joint control of Offaly for this current weekend, and that they're very keen to go and get a result on the back of what's been a very difficult week for the team, because they've also involved in a big fundraiser which is coming up in a few weeks' time. And the late Liam Kearns was even in a video which I think was shot late last week, and it had to be pulled at the weekend after the tragic news. And they had played Laois in a challenge game on Friday, and I think a lot of people are still just coming to terms with the very sudden nature of the fact that Liam has passed away as well. But that looks like it's going to be a 2:00 throw-in. I see Shane Brophy from the Nenagh Guardian has reported that the game has been brought forward, so it's no longer clashing with the rugby. It was due to be on at 6 p.m, so it looks like an afternoon start in Semple Stadium. And given the affection that there is for Liam Kearns in Tipperary after their run to an All-Ireland semi-final in 2016, I would think that both sets of supporters, a neighbourly clash of the weekend, will be keen to pay tribute to Liam Kearns before that game at the weekend as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good stuff. Thanks for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
It's Will O'Callaghan there. It's 31 minutes past 9. OTB AM live with Gillette Labs every morning. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night edition available now. On tomorrow's programme, Keith Wood, Conor Gilligan, Champions League reaction, John Duggan live from Cheltenham, and plenty more as well. Loads of comments coming in. We didn't get to them, but we will properly get to them on tomorrow's show. We're going to play out with Kilkenny legend Tommy Walsh chatting with Joe last night about the league. Have a splendid day.
You're very welcome back. So there was in amongst Irish rugby doing its thing, and the strangest match of the day most of us will ever see, there was hurling over the weekend. Tommy Welch is with us. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Joe.
So I might just, as a jumping off point, touch on something I had not intended to touch on, which is the structure of the league, because everybody is making the point that it's not quite working. And yet I sat down to watch the highlight show last night on RTE with Don Logue and Liam Sheedy and Joanne Cantwell, and it was really striking on the flagship Here Hurling Fans is your weekend of hurling. Even they were just very down on what's being produced and a bit frustrated and do not feel that the quality of games is good enough. And reading every piece in the papers this afternoon, it's pretty unanimous that this thing is not working. The league is not working. Where are you and what we're seeing over the weekend and the last number of weeks?
Yeah, Joe, I suppose I go against the grain on that now, to be honest with you. Speaking as both a supporter and a player, I love the league the way it is. As a player, Joe, love the league. Why? It didn't have the same intensity, same pressure as championship games where it was do or die. It was all about the result. Performance, yes, managers and coaches, they raved about performance, but really nothing mattered, only the victory at the end of the day when it comes to knockout championship. So league was always beautiful. You start off in, at that time was around February, and you'd have crowds of maybe 10, 15,000 at it. huge excitement. Start of the year, looking forward to playing probably with new teammates, lads coming fresh out of minor, Joe, players that maybe the supporters hadn't seen before. It's great. Any new youngsters coming into a panel gives a great buzz, a great excitement to guys that are there maybe a while. So it was lovely and fresh, and we absolutely loved the league. We didn't always have our best teams out because, you had the Ballyhale lads, maybe usually during Club All-Irelands, they might be rested to come back towards the later on the year. So young lads got their chance. Or maybe if you weren't on the team the previous year as well, Joe, you got your chance in the league. And you could play without, I suppose, the great intensity, even eyes looking at you, that there would be when you're playing Crow Park in a Leinster final or a Leinster semi-final.
Could I jump in there for a sec, Tommy? I accept all of that. That sounds to me like it's just working for the players, therefore. Like, we're having a great time and the spectacle isn't very good. Like, for instance, after Clare Galway, watching the analysis and watching the scores, I think Liam Sheedy made the point that this, if he was manager and this was a training match behind closed doors, he'd have blown the whistle and said, what's going on after a few seconds? There was that little intensity. So I'm sure you and the players on the field do enjoy that easier aspect. But I mean, what's the point of a tournament? Let them go away and have challenge matches and let fans turn up for free if that's the attitude, no?
No, I wouldn't agree. I didn't agree with that view either, because do supporters not love seeing new players come out in, say, that game in, we'll say, Nolan Park yesterday, maybe 10, 15,000 at it, in Semple Stadium. Although Semple Stadium was a bit different with Waterford and Tipperary, that was like a championship game.
Yeah.
The Galway and Clare game. Right, there's huge crowds at it. Do the supporters not like seeing new young players? How many new young players are we seeing?
I think they would like seeing new players. I suppose the argument was you can have new players or not, but actually it's just the intensity of it. Because Henry Shefflin came out after the Galway win against Clare, and even he kind of conceded, look, we're all managing different training loads and we're doing different things. So even that was a subtle acknowledgement that the intensity of the games isn't maybe where they will be. So yeah, people like seeing the young players, but young players can still be part of an intense contest. It feels like they're just fulfilling fixtures, not Galway alone in this instance, but it feels like too many of the teams are perhaps just fulfilling the fixtures, training very hard, and nobody cares that much if they win the league or not.
Yeah, well, listen, I will agree with you. I think there's no right or wrong answer to this. I think it's all a matter of opinion. So you and other supporters like you might prefer more championship-like feeling to a league. Versus probably me and thousands other would like to see the opposite. What's going on at the moment? I'll give you an example. You work hard on a Sunday there on the radio all day. You want to go home to a nice dinner. Say my dinner is a good chicken roast. You have your stuffing, you have your Wexford potatoes, you have your gravy all over it. You can't wait for it after a day's work. What if you eat a steak dinner 10 minutes before it? Are you going to enjoy it as much? So we've a big, intense league for, say, the next 2 or 3 months. Are we going to be able to, as supporters, I'm talking about Joe, are you going to have the same, fervour and excitement and build-up to the championship 2 weeks later? Because you have to remember, the championship's starting 2 or 3 weeks after the league final. So, I even found, say, reporting on the games, we're going for maybe 6 or 7 weeks in a row. And you do be tired because, you're building up all week that you're ready for the game on the Sunday. And that's just as working in the media. And, after a while, you do get tired. Thursday, the old way when it was different, when you had a championship game every 3 or 4 weeks, that was definitely different. You could have a more championship-like league then. But I think the format of the Munster round robin and the Leinster round robin at the moment, I don't think it lends itself to having a championship-like league. Yeah. I thought Brian Lohan, I don't hear Brian Lohan's interview.
I did, yeah.
Brian Lohan, he said, and I thought he was on the money, he said, it's a time to experiment players, but you also want to win. And I do think all managers are trying to do that. I think it's just the experiment of the players really is maybe the likes of the supporters want to see their full championship team. I don't know.
No, totally. And we'll get into the hurling now. I should tell you, by the way, I haven't seen enough of the hurling league. I'm busy Six Nations on TV and stuff, so I'm kind of not seeing it. But I'm just reflecting the vibe I got from the highlight show last night, and even just reading pieces today. GA writers are saying this really isn't up to scratch, and the reason it's happened is fairly obvious. Do you remember a couple of years ago when Division 1A and Division 1B was, there was a chasm between the two. You did not want to be in Division 1B. And so Division 1A was amazing. All these teams fighting to stay in it. incredibly intense games, and then the almost the playoff in Division 1B to see which of the two got up was this amazing game. So that is where we were, and it was brilliant, I thought. Like as a spectator, it was brilliant, but certainly what's emerged is players and management said it was too much, and you have to listen to them, I appreciate, but they say too stressful, too much, and also what's exacerbated that now is the round robins. So between the stress of staying up and now you have round robins thrown in, I don't know, it doesn't sound like the hurling fraternity are going to go back.
Yeah, well, if you also see the argument, especially at that time, Joe, if you remember back to Division 1A and 1B, was the argument that we're not doing enough to promote hurling in Antrim, in Laois, in Kildare and Westmeath. So, you know, we can't have it every way. I think the hurling, you know, it is going on at the moment that do we put a hurling to every youngster? You know, it's part of our culture, it's part of our history of this country. It's our own game, the game of hurling, the greatest field game in the world. That's the argument put out there, and there's so few counties probably at the top as opposed to the Gaelic football version. And I think by having it the way it is, yes, you're not going to have the huge championship like league games, but you're promoting like the crowds that are going to the games in Laois. I was at the Kenny Laois match in O'Moore Park, a great game. I wasn't at the Kenny and Antrim game up in Antrim. That was supposed to be a fantastic game again, huge supporters. So, like, you know, you can't have it every way. And I do agree with you. Listen, there's no right or wrong answer. I think you'll have half the people will look one way and half will look the other, like, you know.
I suspect you're right. I'd be curious. 53106 is the text number. Hurling fans, maybe get in touch. Let us know what you make of it. Curious for your thoughts on Tipperary. So, Liam Call's first season in charge. They are scoring goals to beat the band. They've scored 10 goals in their 4 games. 10 goals and 102 points. And obviously, Liam Call's Waterford tended to score lots of goals as well, and the Waterford players would say that he'd always be onto them saying go for it, go for it, go for goals. So we're seeing that in Tip. We're seeing an energy about Tip. Is this the beginning of a big year for Tipperary, or not so sure?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely a mindset, this goal scoring, Joe. Remember, we had an old teacher of ours from Carlow came into us to speak in the club one time, and he was saying you had to go for maybe 5 goals to score 1. And if you look at these Tipperary players, every one of them are taking on their man. Even the Cork players seem to be doing it at the moment with Harley. Every time they get the ball, they take on their man, which creates goal chances. You saw Seamus Callan before he went off injured, and hopefully he gets some good news on that. But he had a great goal chance that only he would have taken it. Say 8 out of 10 forwards would tip that ball over the bar. He went to take on his man 2 or 3 times, and only for a great save from the Waterford goalie, Billy Nolan, he kept the ball out of the net. But Tipperary players, they're not just scoring these goals by chance. It seems to be a mindset that Liam Call puts into his teams. When you get the ball inside, take on your man, and there has to be runners outside. I think you have to be excited if you're a Tipperary man, Joe, because they're coming from different places. There's a kind of a changing of the guard. Like you were talking about the class of 2010, that kind of backbone, that the Tipperary team that win the All-Ireland, the under 21 at the same time. They're all coming to the, you know, over the 30 age mark now. So they need new players. We saw that probably in the last year of Liam Sheedy's reign. They probably need to freshen up the team with new young players. Jake Morris, like, he scored a huge amount of goals for Tipperary on minor first to win an All-Ireland. Then under 20, he won 2 All-Ireland, scoring lots of important goals. One of them was a last-minute winner against Cork in a Munster under 21 final. So Jake Morris, I think, just needed someone maybe to put some faith in him, that he's playing probably a run of games consecutively. And we've seen the 3 goals like he scored the weekend. Every one of them bounced low into the net. How many goals do we see saved, Joe, where you give the goalie, all the goalies now seem to be top quality. They're doing their own training, I suppose, goalkeeping training away from the panel. If you hit the ball halfway, you know, up their body at all, you're going to stop it 9 times out of 10. You bounce it low into the corners. And Jake Morris did that for every one of his goals. And it's the work rate. I've never seen Tipperary as fit in years. They look so slim.
And Tommy, do you, because not to get back to our previous conversation, but like Waterford last year, almost a cautionary tale. Great league, and they look so fit in the league and so powerful, win the league and capitulate then come championship for whatever reason. That'll be the nagging worry at the back of Cahill's mind. I presume he's learned something from last year.
Yeah, of course it's a worry, because you always remember the last year. You're going to remember with Liam Cahill, the very same thing kind of is happening. But like, you know, what about Tipperary last year? They won no games and still didn't come out of Munster. So I always look at stats. You can kind of look at stats any way you want to build up your own story. Like, what about 2019 and 18, where Tipperary or Limerick won 2 league finals? So then suddenly, is that the right thing to do? So listen, I can understand your point, but I think it is a hard one for Liam Sheedy, because he doesn't have a seasoned team that he can wait until the summer to have them peak. He has to actually find players to replace, maybe.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I would think it's a symptom of a new manager as well. Like, even Jack O'Connor in the football last year with Kerry, desperate to win the league. This year, not as important because we're a bit more settled. And Derek Ling, like, he's very much talking about wanting. Not all these managers, it seems, want the semi-final and the final in the league. He wants a semi-final. He wants as many games as possible. And probably an interesting game next week will be Kilkenny-Waterford at Nolan Park, and that'll decide who goes into the semi-final, with probably Limerick, Tip and Cork through already. So Kilkenny play Waterford, Nolan Park next weekend to see who joins them. And Ling is saying, I want these games. That's a real new manager. Give me as much prep time as possible. How are Kilkenny looking to you?
Yeah, sure. Listen, he's taken over from, arguably the greatest manager that has ever, managed in the game of hurling. Like Brian Cody, 11 All-Irelands, and all he has won, and probably more respected even than the titles was the spirit he seemed to grow in his teams. But I suppose the one advantage for Derek is, even in all Brian's greatness, it's 2015 since they were able to manage to win the Lee McCarthy Cup. So he's not coming after Kilkenny winning 2 or 3 All-Irelands in a row, or even one All recently. So I think that definitely does help, that the Kilkenny public do realise it. There's a building job. But I think there's the spine of a very, very good team. And why would I say that? Is because the young players that I was talking about maybe 3 years ago, they're suddenly now in their mid-20s. They have the strength and conditioning work built up. You can see the Kilkenny boys, they're definitely, if you compare them to the players of my time, they're much more, we'll say, physical guys that you know lived in the gym, I suppose, for the winter months as opposed to ourselves. Yeah. And I think that's a testament to him and the way the game has gone. You have to be like that to take on the likes of Limerick. And I find them guys now are growing into the roles in the centre. And maybe the older players and younger players coming in, they're building up the positions on the wings. Like you see, Billy Ryan, you have Hugh Lawler, all these guys now taking up centre positions. Richie Reid is now, he was probably the best centre-back in club hurling with Ballyhale for the last, number of years. And it was only last year to put him in centre-back with Kilkenny. They were playing him wing-back, they were playing in midfield. Last year, centre-back, and he's an awesome centre-back. And they're building the team around these players. And, Billy Drennan is a new young player star, and he was part of Derek Ling's under-20 team, Joe. Billy would have All-Irelands in handball. He's a serious sports star. Billy Drennan comes from a small club in North Kilkenny, Galmay, and he's been doing this since he was 10, 11 years of age. It's just a fantastic player, and he's really grown into his role as free taker and popping over 3 or 4 pints of play. You have Garo Dunn from our own club, and as I said, the young players from the last few years are now filling up centre roles. So right, I think it's very exciting.
Yeah. So, and Waterford coming to town. Davy Fitzgerald, it's kind of like that's game of the weekend. I saw him, he was on the Late on Friday, and he was asked, what's it like being back at Waterford, and he was saying, well, first time around I had this team that were not the end of the road, but hardened, seasoned, elder statesmen, whereas he feels almost this current batch are coming into their peak, and he said, super excited. And everybody was excited about Waterford this time last year. So what's your read? They were beaten by Tipperary over the weekend, down to 14 men. What's your read on what's he trying to do with Waterford early stages, do you think?
Yeah, well, he definitely has a few injuries. Conor Prunty, you see one after the weekend, Austin Gleeson going off. So there's a few injuries there, and he lost a few lads to Australia and stuff. So, he hasn't got the perfect package starting off either, Davy Fitz, as regards the team or the panel that he can pick from. Jamie Barron will probably serve a suspension maybe after being sent off. Yeah. So it's not simple, but I think like the league semi-finals and finals, after looking at Waterford last year, like just looking at how far the game has come on, Joe. So now you don't just have a speech the Wednesday before a game or a Friday. You go out and you rile up your team and go out and play the match with fire and brimstone. Now you analyse teams to death. And as Liam Sheedy said in the Sunday game last night in Donlow, he said, you're in the semi-finals and finals. It gives your opposition, because you know who you're playing. It's not like it's an open draw from championship. You know the teams you're going to be playing in either the Munster or the Leinster Championship. So do you want to be seen in the 2 or 3 weeks coming up to championship in these huge profile games? So it's a difficult one. I'd say Davey will be happy enough to put in a good performance, but maybe keep a low profile coming into that month round robin.
Oh dear, it's a hell of a competition. Right, okay. We're out of time, sorry to say. Let's have a longer chat in the next couple of weeks, maybe, inevitably as we head towards the serious stuff. But thanks, Tommy, for this evening. An extra 500,000 watch match of the day, Premier League highlights on the Saturday evening. It was really boring.
I would like to see if they all stuck with the full 20 minutes.
It was hard to stay with it, I found.
Yeah.
It's just like losing concentration or something.
Imagine being a blind person watching that, Joe. It was pointed out as well on Sunday morning. That was a real slap in the face to any partially sighted viewers that would have been on BBC on Saturday night.
I'm not sure what their options
were. Did they not have rights to the World Feed?
Well, that's what...
No.
Okay. No,
okay.
One of the commentators who released a statement said that they should use the World Rights Feed, but
I don't think they had rights for some reason. There's a certain quirk there that the Origin Match of the Day doesn't have rights to its own World Feed. But there was a point Jonathan Lew had written a piece several months ago making the argument that football could be better without commentators at this stage. The picture quality is so good. We all know the players. They're not adding that much in the main. Let's just let us watch the football. It'll be all akin to a stadium experience.
Yeah. What did you think?
Well, after Premier League highlights on Saturday, I disagree.
Yeah. There's an element. I would like to see a little bit of a bigger sample size, because there's an element sometimes when I'm watching the game that I feel like I'm being taken over by what Jamie Carragher's opinion is, and I'm thinking more about what he, he's really angry that something wasn't a penalty and he's gone on about it for 10 minutes, and I'm only really taking in that rather than what I'm seeing in front of me. And there is an argument that I wouldn't mind a world away from that, but I don't know if the answer is just no commentary. I think it needs to be, maybe it's a little bit more less narrative based and more just say what's in front of you.
But looking at Gary Ringrose in that half sitting up position with his hand in the air was chilling, and you're feeling terribly for him, and you were thinking of his family. Andy Farrell thankfully afterwards said they'd been texting the family and he was open talking, so that's great. I presume he's out for a period now, Rory.
Yeah, he was stood down for a while. He got another another concussion on the New Zealand tour as well. He's now missed the series decider in New Zealand, and he's going to miss the Grand Slam decider in Dublin, and what an awful shame that is. Hopefully I presume he will be able to come to the game and he'll be well enough to take part in if there's celebrations to be had, that he'll be able to enjoy them to some degree. But what a shame that a player who's been such a fundamental part of this campaign won't be able to be there on the pitch. But I can't see him playing for Leinster for a little while.
Do we know the nature of the injury?
No, they haven't. They said he's doing well. That's the extent of it. I think you can safely say he's failed his whatever assessments he's done, and he's going into they're really, really careful with brain injuries at the moment with Ireland. I think they're leading the front on that. If you look at what they did with Doris, with James Ryan, sending him off to specialist in Birmingham, making sure that they're completely right. They've stood down Doris, Ryan and Sexton at different periods. If they feel like they need to stand Gary Ringrose down, they'll prioritise firstly his well-being and also his ability to recover long term, because they want Gary Ringrose to be, Gary Ringrose is an asset to them for the next 5, 6 to 7, 8 years, so they want him to be able to play on. They won't rush him back, and I don't think we'll be seeing him in blue for a little while. Hopefully they give him as much time as he needs, and they have shown a willingness to do that with players over the last couple of years.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
OTB.